situation is not precarious at all. I probably should post a photo of it later, but there's a light up there, and it's like hanging from a string. It's stuck on with blue tack. It's hilarious. Anyway, welcome. We're going to do some compile fixing in a minute. But first up, I'm just going to quickly promote the stream as usual. We always start by putting it on Reddit, and also putting it just on Reddit. Actually, we already did the Twitter one. So let me show you how to use a web browser. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'll just tear off a tab, and excellent. And on this tab, I just adjust this monitor. It's all tilted. I don't know why. It's probably the heavy light on one corner. Sorry, I rotated the camera. That probably was really unpleasant. Sorry about that. Anyway, Reddit. Let's have a look. That's my name. And let's have a look down here. So we're just going to something like watch people code and create a post, and it's Godot plus Rust, working on that Godot Rust link, improve Godot Rust link. So we're going to improve the Godot Rust link using specs bindings. I should probably say, I warn you, lots of boring starts with compilation issues. We've got some compilation issues to fix first, which is always wonderfully inspiring. Oh, no, it just says welcome to the chat room. If you're here, feel free to say hello, and then I'll have something to respond to. Hey! Thanks, Ardawani, and I hope to share it as well when I'm done. So let's make a link. The link is to Twitch, so you already know the link since you're here. Here it is, URL post, and I'm going to remember to push the button today that actually saves this. Start recording. So that saves it a video on my own hard drive, high quality, and on Discord. On Discord, I need to say in streaming. Oh, streaming! Yay! Awesome. And I might just let Web Constructor know, because I demand his attention and his time. Excellent. You should be on the Discord, by the way, if you're watching this video recorded. We're missing out on having your presence. I'm not sure how to share the link with you in this situation. Maybe I'll just post it inside the Reddit thread here. So make a streaming, make an invite people, edit the link, make sure it never expires, and there's no limit to the number of uses. Generate a new link, copy, and paste it in here, or join the Discord. Blah. Done. There we go. Isn't that great? Okay, so let's get on with the topic at hand. Yes, friends, come join us. Onto the topic at hand. Oh, I've got a new toy. I've got a new Unify network system. That's a really nice way of setting up your network. Very happy with that so far. But yes, internet's slightly faster. It'll let me set up better VLANs later on for server administration, but that's like so far in the future. Welcome to the stream, everybody. If you're just joining us, I'm Tom Lees. I work on the Recall Singularity, which is a space game where you build factories. I use Rust for the computation, Godot for the rendering, and it's good fun all around. At the moment, the problem we're fixing is I've been writing code to bind Godot and Rust together, and what I've been doing is creating this kind of really custom code. So every time I have some problem to solve, these ones are called from Godot. So just scroll down slightly. Every time I've got a problem to solve, I write some custom code around it, and I started to realize that it would be smarter to write so-called systems in specs and then write a one-off translation that's common across pretty much all 3D things. So up here, I've been sending events to my Godot bindings when the person placed modules, which are like little things you build, like conveyors, things to pick up, that sort of stuff. When you build those, events get generated. So if you add one, it calls add module here. And in add module, we try and get the scene of the module, and then we figure out what the name it should be in the tree is. This tile name, that's what shows up in the scene tree. And then down here we have where we set the node name, add it as a child, and place it in the world. And so what we're switching from is that approach where every single thing, so down here we've got spaceships, every single thing has custom synchronization code. I couldn't find it in here. Okay, that's a really good, silly question. What is specs? So specs is a library for Rust, and what it does is it lets you break your game objects into little tiny pieces called components. So each game object could be, for instance, a module in this world, or it could be a spaceship or something. And you say, okay, I'm going to segregate the idea of it being a spaceship from the idea of where it's located. I'm going to segregate those two ideas from which model I use to render it. And I'm going to segregate those from some other thing, like that a player can control it. These are all splits that I've already made. Those are all components. And so what specs does is it manages all that stuff, all those components and their entities, and something called systems that modify components. So the advantage of specs is it's an approach that means that none of your game objects get really massive and unwieldy, which can happen in games. Like the player can get so complicated with like sound effects they play, footsteps, physics, graphics, all that stuff. It can get so complicated that it becomes unmanageable. The class is so big. And so specs allows you to break into smaller parts and manage it more easily with little itty-bitty systems that do little things. So I'm creating components. So I'll show you a couple. I've placed them in this components folder, and in mod I've created this one tracks the idea of where we're going to create our objects in my scene tree. So they're inside a world, which is either a spaceship or it's the outside world, which defines a spatial parent based on the way I set up my scene. This one's a bit custom to me, and then it creates you're welcome at Ardawani. It creates a parent inside that, like floors or tiles or something, and then it creates a child, which is going to be this particular one. So remember I showed you before, we named the node tile something underscore something else. We'd put that in the child name, and it defines the node name as it ends up in Godot. And finally a template, which is this 3D template key. So if I was making this open source library, I'd probably make this template a template argument as well. And it's got a very confusing name. So my point is that defines the model. It's either a mesh or it's a scene. So if we look up here, we can see that this is my implementation. I've got two types of things at the moment. Either I've got a list of modules, which are little conveyors and stuff. Like, was it a conveyor? Is it a wall? Is it a scoop? These are all models that I have. So if we have a look at the list, conveyors, storage, which is a little yellow box. That's really ugly, but it's a work in progress. Walls of different kinds, refinery, scoop, manufacturer, constructor, etc. Those are the different things in the game at the moment. Some of these are things I plan to add to the game very soon. Or space objects. So at the moment we've only got something that contains all the components, that's a spaceship, and a player park, which is this little pink thing you can move around in your behalf. So this key that I showed you before in the other component, let me just find my way back. This key specifies which model gets instantiated, and I've got a piece of code. This code is at the moment called a system, but I might make it not a system for reasons we'll discuss later. But a system takes in components and modifies them. In this case, it takes in components and starts building stuff in the scene tree. So this is what we were working on last stream. I'm pretty happy with the concept, but on fixing compile issues, I started to realize that it was full of data from Godot that wasn't threaded and therefore isn't a good fit for the system model. Licorice tea to keep me alive. So yeah, that was a quick catch up. That was a catch up. Quick, you decide if it was quick. Run. So if I try and build this, we've still got a number of compilation issues. So I must have introduced this new one here. It just occurred to me how much space I've got on my screen. The reason I've got so much screen real estate is because I'm still using small fonts. Let me just change back to the fonts I normally use for streaming. This is a 4K monitor, but I'm only projecting it to you at full HD, or 1080p. So you need a larger font than I do. Let's see, 17 is a pretty good fit. Apply. So hopefully that makes it easier for you to read as we do this together. So now I'm just trying to decide whether I want to push through and make this compile with my current ugly, I probably do, current ugly systems approach. Or not. Let's not. Let's not try and make this compile with the current approach of putting Godot data in. So what would I do in that case? Okay, so I've got two main pieces of Godot data that's already in specs. I've got this. I've got one component that holds pointers to spatials, and so I had to say unsafe send and sync here to let this spatial live in this component. The other thing I've got is a resource that I'm using for entity creation, which contains spatials in it, and also entity 3D templates. So these names map to templates, and templates at the moment, either there's no template because we couldn't load one, there's a scene, or there's a mesh. So this is what, if I find an object in my scene that he's making, this is going to be the concrete thing I'm going to make. Packed, scene, and mesh are two classes from the Godot Rust library, so they represent the same thing in Godot. Mesh is pretty obvious. It is just a mesh loaded, like, that's all the triangles and lines that make up a 3D thing. Packed scene is like a collection of nodes in a tree that you can load. So when you save a scene in Godot, like most things you make in Godot are scenes, when you save one, it turns into a packed scene when you load it back up. So that's how I'm storing this. I'm kind of, I'm torn between that whole keep refactoring or just try and make a compile. Let's just go for make a compile. Let's have some ugly sends and syncs. Let's leave the idea of fixing. I'd rather remove all these and not claim that the Godot data is safe. One thing that really bothers me about the bindings right now is how much unsafe code creeps into my user code. I would rather that any unsafe stuff was handled in the library, but that's just life, so oh well. I think it's complaining that I shouldn't be putting that there. Unresolved import. Okay, so we've got GD world data. I'm just going to remove that, and I'm sure we'll figure out what was going on there. So I must have renamed some class at some point. It's not happy with the lifetimes, so we're supposed to specify an elided lifetime. So we'll just follow the compiler's suggestion, and I'm sure it's all going to work out. So I've just added this lifetime, so there's a whole bunch of places I'm going to have to put it in now. Template. Iterate bound default is not implemented for this template. Okay, so I need to choose that if no one specifies the template because they create a default component, it's because I've derived default here. So I need to choose something that I can use as none. Let's just specifically add a none value to this, or we could make it an option. It's probably cleaner to make it an option. So if I say here this is an option, then it's possible the person hasn't got a template. Why would I want to have an empty spatial floating around? An empty spatial with nothing inside it. So if this code created an empty spatial with nothing inside it, and it doesn't make a scene, it doesn't make a mesh, that could be somewhat useful because in the editor you could see it, and maybe you could tie some code to it. So let's just say that that's a useful thing. So there's places that are not going to compile because now this is an option. And that's okay, we'll fix them. What's the deal with this GD world data? I'm just wondering, what have I done to break it? So let's I'll just quickly find the right one. So what have I changed since the last time I looked at this? Because I must have renamed that component and forgotten. I see. I used to have this concept of GD world data having parents down here. It used to be a resource, and then it clicked that I didn't really want to make that a resource. I only really wanted to make it something that I passed into this one thing, and that way we wouldn't have a resource floating around living inside the specs world that contain these pointers to Godot that are so dangerous. So by putting it inside entity creation, it would be fine. So whenever I see GD world data, I probably only see it in this one place. I should be referring to self. So when it says down here, it can't find it. Where does it say that again? I'm just going to remove this so that I can see the chat window again. Okay. We don't need to ask specs for the data because we don't, we've got it in self. And then I might just close all in group to give me some more space. So these are the different things that specs is going to pass into the system. It's going to pass in a list of all the entities in the system. It's going to allow me to write to the component called GD spatial, and it's going to let me read from the component called scene lock. And so if you're not used to specs, this is why it's powerful. So we could basically limit, say for each system how we want to limit its access to all the components. And it actually can run in parallel across all the systems that touch different components can all run in parallel. Even if they all read from the same components, as long as they only write to a unique one that no one else is reading from, they can run in parallel. So Specs gives you threading for free, which is really cool. It also puts all the data together, which is really nice. So as you iterate through something, we're only iterating through this list of spatials and this list of scene locks. We're not worrying about positions and stuff. If you understand layout and memory, if you start putting positions in between all the other data, then as you run forward through it, then it slows down the memory bandwidth. So that's one reason why an ECS, or an entity component system, improves performance. So these are the three things it's going to pass our system, and it passes them in this order. So it calls this run function, and it passes in system data. That thing up there. So we unpack it here. Entities, write storage is a mutable list of spatials, and we got this thing called scene locations. They used to be positions, but I refactored this. So we're going to call it GD. When I first started coding this, I was thinking it would be a position, and then I started realizing I wanted to know where in the scene tree it is too. And then I realized I didn't want to put position in it because I already have I have a component specifically for 3D position called pos that's used by physics. So it seems silly to have two components that do the same thing. So I took the position out, and so now you'll see it called GD position, but that's what I originally called it is changed. World data. So world data is the one we deleted, so we'll get rid of this. I'm just referring to this. Okay, so here we iterate through these components. I'm not going to explain the code too much. If you want to learn more about it, I think you should look at the previous stream where we actually coded it. I talked about it in detail, and I got to try and keep moving. But you can ask questions, I don't mind. I'd prefer questions rather than just, answering theoretical questions that no one actually has said out loud. Template. You might be able to tell I like teaching. Clone is not implemented for template 3D name. So that's just a matter of telling Godot that we want clone to be defined. This is an enumerator, and we can just say, look Godot, we'd like you to have debug and clone outputs, and it will make them happen. So debug means that you can write it to a string, and clone means that you can copy it if you want manually by using a .clone option. No method name get found for... I'm going to just work through the topic again. So, cannot find world data in this scope. Okay, we don't need to lock world data.parents anymore. This was something old. So, parents is actually now called self.parents. So we can just use it straight down here. Where did we say parents in here? Okay. So we just need to say self.parents. And the .ok was to check that we had managed to get it from... hold on. We had managed to get it from the mutex. If you're new to Rust, by all means ask me any questions you like on the chat. If you're not new to Rust, by all means ask me any questions you like on the chat, or just say hello. I mean, In terms of saying hello, hi Togglebit, nice to see you. We had a nice Saturday today. Family barbecue, watched a movie, watched the Lorax again. I mean, I love a good musical with the kids. And what else did we do? I put a Wi-Fi router in the roof by hand because didn't have the drill on hand. I'd lent that to someone, so that was good fun. It's so nice to have the coverage around the house of all the little devices and gadgets that everyone keeps buying will work. One project during the recent renovations was to put Cat6 cable, that's that blue stuff that carries data, between computers. You plug it in both ends, it's like a tube that carries trucks, and those trucks are information. Okay, so it wants me to say A for A. A for A. So, anyway, I've been planning this Wi-Fi router since I first put the cables in, and so it was really nice to actually hook it up and see the coverage throughout the house, because in our house we have this metal roof, and so from a radio point of view, putting the Wi-Fi up against the roof makes it much more effective. Before it was partially blocked by this giant metal box I have in my office that contains the network gear. So now everyone everywhere can watch their cat pictures and Netflix shows and be happy. And happy is what I'm going for. Let's see. It expected a reference. Okay, so this is where we get the upshot of this option I had before, right? I think? No? It got a... Why is there an option here? Oh, that's right. I decided that world ID was going to be optional. So when you make this thing, you need to say default. That's what default parent is for. Right? I like Togglebit has written in the chat that Cat6 means you get 6 times the cat pictures, and it's absolutely true. You get so many cat pictures in there. I mean, I can fit, it's like 1,000 cat pictures per second or something. 1,000 megabit. It's pretty good. It's good. It's almost 10 times. It's 10 times the cat pictures of Cat 5. I can tell you that much for sure. What happens if you like pictures of cute dogs? Someone think of that. Okay, so gdpods.worldid is an option. So it's either contains a world ID or it doesn't, right? If it contains a world ID, the parent we want to use so if it contains a world ID, we want to map that world ID by looking it up in self-parents. We want to turn it from being just an ID number to being a very specific parent. And so we can map that by using, let's see, parent ID, we can map that by looking up in self-parents.get. And so what this will do is mean that now we've got a different, and we have to actually pass the parent ID in here. We now have a different option. That option contains the value of the parent, so it turns from being just an ID to a spatial, because don't forget that parents is defined up here as being a dictionary or a hash map of spatials. Dictionary is the Python name for this thing. So when I'm doing Rust, I still think in Python a lot. I'll be doing Rust. I'm doing a lot more, way more Rust than Python, but because they're so similar, I can kind of copy the idea across. You might say, Tom, they're so different from each other, but the thing I like about Rust is it's like a really strict Python. There's no features that are important that matter to me personally in Python that aren't already in Rust, except for some meta programming stuff that I can live without. For the incredible speed. Let's see. Self.parents.get. Okay, so now we have an option that either contains a spatial or it doesn't. And so what we want to do is get or default. I think or default is the correct one. I'm just going to load the documentation. So to load documentation on your own computer, you can say rust up docs. And that'll open a browser tab that contains the docs loaded from your own computer. And then we can search for things that are useful. So I'm looking for option. Okay, so option is an enumerator that can either be some or none. And it has a whole bunch of useful functions and we use it all the time. And let's say or else, I think it is. No, just or. No, or you takes another option, or else takes a function. There was one that was unwrap or, I think. Yeah. Returns the contain value or a default. And so I have a default in mind. So it's unwrap or. And not the kind of wrap you do by like talking really fast. And when you unwrap or you pass, the one we want as the default is this one called default apparent. Hold on, hold the phone. Rust option. Oh, that's nice. Or Rust specs. No, still got this problem. Whenever I Google for, I search for Rust specs, it always sends me here. Do I have to type Rust option? Rust. Oh, I had to put the explanation point first. Okay, so it's looking in the standard library. Okay, so it'd be nice to know how to look for it in docs.rs. I'm sure there's some way of doing that, and I don't want to look it up right now. But knowing that just for standard is still a huge step up. But the local one is nice in that it's instant and it works on a plane. So, you know, I just kind of wanted to let people know that it's there. Where was I? I was trying to make this compile. So this returns the parent we want to use. And it always returns one. So we can just say let grandparent equal that. We can get rid of this code. So we're always going to have a grandparent, because even if we can't find the parent, we're going to end up with the default one, this spatial here. Then we try and find the one specified in the parent name. Now, if we can't find it, maybe we should create it. So, you know, to do, create a parent here. I'm not sure why I want to put this off. I've got a class called mesh placer, and it creates nodes. So let's just have a quick look, see if I can. That creates new meshes. I'm just trying to recall, without having to look it up, an example that I've written already that will place children, because I know I've made one before. Sorry for that loud click there. Yeah, that tries to find it and cast it. If it finds it, It expects it to exist. I'm not sure I've made spatials before. Ooh! Okay, you put an exclamation point docs.rs and then specs. Okay, thank you, Togglebit. He solved all my problems. I could just relax now. That'll be useful for the next time I need specs. Let's see if that works. Yay! And this top one is the one I was looking for. And I can use the cursor keys to get there. And then once you're here, you can push S and start typing in things. So, you know, here's documentation about specs. But when you first start reading about specs, I highly recommend that you go to the book that isn't there anymore. That's a pity. Okay, now we're in the documentation for GitHub pages. Gone deeply astray. But anyway, the book when it was there was really great. I'm sure it's gone somewhere else. You probably could find the source code for the book in the repository or something. I suggest you make a pull request to fix it. Okay. GTPOS. So this is a variable that's defined just above, just here. So I'm a bit perplexed as to why that's not working. Oh, it's referring to a different line. Do I need to recompile? Yeah, it's a different problem. That was old code. Okay. So it expects me not to pass parent ID in directly, but to pass in a reference to it. Sure, okay. Unwrap or it expected I think I was supposed to say unwrap or default. Yeah. Okay, I'm not understanding what unwrap or is doing, obviously. Let's have another look at that documentation. Unwrap or, as here, yeah, I probably need to say and then. Mismatched types. Expected of reference. This is better. Found a spatial. So I need to return a reference to the parent, which I'll need to do anyway. No method named get found for type pointed to a hash map. Yeah, why would it point to a hash map and not have get? Self.templates. What is self.templates? It's a pointer to a hash map. Hash maps do have a get function. In fact, we've just used it up here. Oh, I see. So our problem is a little bit confusing. As it says down here, the problem is that we don't know how to compare two of these enumerators or to hash them, right? If you can compare them, you can hash them too, I guess. And so the solution to that problem is to actually derive something else from this key. So this key, template 3D name, I need to say here that we want to be able to hash it and figure out if it's equal to a previous version and compare it. If we do all that, we can use it as a map key. Now it's complaining that there may not actually be a template. Now remember how I said before that it was okay to not have a template? We would let that happen. So maybe it's possible that the person said they don't have a template. Maybe it's possible that they said they had a template but they never managed to load it. So in both those cases, I'd like to make an empty spatial that has no data in it. So the first thing we're going to do is put that and then stuff around again. Remember we did and then last time? So we're going to take this. So we're doing the same refactoring as we did for grandparent, basically. So we're taking this is it's a complicated enough line that we might want to put it above as opposed to putting it right there in the new spatial line. So we're going to create a template line, right? And the template's based on gdpos.template this time. This here is a template name. So if it reaches here in this function, then they definitely specified one. We're going to load it from self templates and to pass in the template name. And then we're going to unwrap it. And we don't want to unwrap it at all. So we want it to be either some if there's a template or none if there's no template. Once we have a template here, which is, you know, a mesh or a scene, or it's going to be nothing. So if it's a scene, why is it unhappy? Interesting. Okay. I'm a bit put off by the fact that this is not wanting to compile, and therefore all the syntax highlight has gone away. What did I miss? I removed the word match from this, and so it was no longer a match statement. That's what's wrong. So we've got, these are the three options. There's one specified and found that's a scene, one specified and found that's a mesh, or there's none. Here I say continue, but I actually want to create a new spatial here. So I believe we just call spatial new, but let me just look that up. So let's put an exclamation point in here. docs.rs. We're looking up the GD native library. Here it is. Bear in mind though, if you're using GD native, don't use 0.6.0. I recommend you use the head of Git. You just check it out yourself. But the documentation is still relevant, so we'll just use that. It's easier to use it from here for me. And now that I've said that out loud, I've lost my trail of thought. Let's write spatial. I'm trying to figure out how to instantiate one of these guys. So yes, we just call new. Easy peasy. But if we don't pass it into Godot as it warns us here, and put it in a tree, it might leak. So let's not do that. Let's not forget. And it's the same thing with the other two objects we just created here. They all need to go into a tree. So here we're going to create a spatial new. And that's all we have to do. So that then comes out and ends up in this variable because of the way Rust works, which is so awesome. And then here, if we have a spatial, so we don't even need to put an unwrap here because we want this to be an option. Okay, if we have a spatial, then we're going to add it to the scene. I'm just trying to figure this out. Okay, that makes sense. That's all fine. So that one returns an option which might have a spatial. That one returns an option which might be a spatial. That one returns definitely a spatial. So we'll just write here that it's going to be some spatial. So it's also an option. So now all the branches return the same type. And I think we might have missed something because it's warning us that they don't all return the same type. It's saying which one's different. This OK here at the top has a curly brace. Curse you, semicolon. Not a curly brace. Curse you. That one semicolon in Rust says this line doesn't return the value out to the top. So we need to remove it. So if the last line has no semicolon on it, it becomes a value of that branch. and then they pop out and end up in this variable because they become the value of this match statement. So, you know, it's super duper handy dandy, really, this feature. But you put semicolon in, then the value doesn't get out. It hits the semicolon and dies. This function takes 2 parameters, but 1 parameter was supplied. So when I add child, you don't just specify the node, you also specify true. Why? I don't know. You just do that. It was some good reason. And that's why every other time I wrote false, not true. So let's just try adding false. False. Let's quickly jump over here and write add child and remind myself, why do I say false? Add child. Illegible unique name. False. I think it's just warning, like, I'm not going to try and guess what that means. It doesn't tell me what a legible unique name is. I bet that that's just something like it renames the node. Whatever. I do know that if you create 2 nodes with the same name, it will automatically rename them, which is great. That's what I want. Expected a struct global world ID. Found an option here. Okay, so other way around. We need to say that we know which world it is. It's in world ID. Yeah, I think this is a different thing. Hold on. Do we even know from the GDPOS what the world ID is? I'm just... Yeah, so we don't actually know from GDPOS what the world ID is, so we're just going to say none. Oh, no, that's right. So we've moved to a different... No, we're still in the same class. So in this one, when we create a GD entity creation thing, we need to also create a concept of, do we know which world these things are that we're creating? If you're in the spaceship scene and you're creating players, you might move them and put them in the spaceship. So that's an idea of knowing the world ID. If you are a spaceship and you're placing the tiles in it, you don't want them to specify each one what its world ID is. They're all going to be inside the spaceship, so it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. That's what that concept is supposed to mean. So the GD entity creation is created for a particular world, and so the person calling it probably knows the world ID, so it can happily put the world ID in that it's working with. And so we'll do so. Global world ID is like a number, basically wrapped inside a struct. Now, why did I make that an option? I did not. Okay. Mismatch types. Insert. Explaining all these things I find uses up a lot of brain bandwidth. It makes things a little bit harder to keep going. Let me just tell you that, believe me, I'm just more awesome when I'm not being watched. And you just take me on that as a given, but it's probably not true, actually. Anyway. Yeah. So it's just telling me that I need to put a semicolon here, so I need to squash the value that's coming out of this with a semicolon so it doesn't escape. Wow, there's a lot of words going on down here. I bet this is because I forgot to import the specs join? No. It's probably something else. Like I forgot to put that there. That makes that a reference. I probably forgot the same thing on these other ones too. Now that I've done that, I probably could import the correct one. No. Why is it not happy with this? Oh, but we'll get to it in a minute. Mismatch types. Okay, so what it's saying is here, I need to, before I return this transform, which is a fully fledged one, I need to turn it into the Godot transform, which is what this from transform is supposed to do. So from transform, okay, so it's saying that I've already done a from transform on it. Yeah, because I did one there. Okay, so I don't even need this particular part here that changes the transform. That's what it's complaining about. I tried to change it into a Godot transform twice. That from transform routine is something I think I've only got on my branch. I think I've pushed it upstream to GD native, but it wasn't ready and I never maintained the pull request, so it's stuck in a pull request. Sorry guys, I just, always working on the game development and didn't follow that up. So if you wish you could work better with transforms and you didn't have to have what's right now says, we'll add transforms later. Unless they've added it since I last checked out. I'm actually on quite an old version of GD native now. It's probably a couple of months old. I haven't been tracking ahead very well. No method name join found for this type. So we've got a storage. A spaceship biped. That sounds suspicious. Read storage, write storage, write storage. Bipeds, positions, scene locations. Bipeds, positions, dot entries. Yeah, so this positions dot entries is something new I hadn't tried before. It's supposed to give me something called an entry. So an entry is like when you go to a hash map and you try and get a value out. If it doesn't exist, you can ask for an entry instead of get, and then it makes it easier to insert a value that's missing. And so this is supposed to make it easier to iterate through and do that. But it's not working. So let's have a look at the example that came with specs. So we're going to open up the specs documentation again. So docs specs. So this time I got it from my history. What I'm looking for in particular is the dot entries thing. A joinable structure that yields all indices returning entry for all elements. Yeah, last time I looked at this stuff, I was looking at it from the join side, I think. And we're doing it on stream last time, you see. I'm not afraid to learn stuff on stream, I guess. I'm always in documentation when I'm coding, pretty much. Probably going to find the game again. Oh. Speaks Rust. Join entries. Yeah, I found this last time. It's very annoying. Oh, that's right. Last time I looked at the specs book. So we're going to go specs Rust Git. I probably could find it from the docs, the specs Rust Git as well. And then hopefully this one has a link to the book that's actually working. Oh, good. That's wonderful. We found the link to the book. And then in here, in joining components, that's where I found the previous example, I think. Oh, that's right. I think I found it in the actual code. So I was looking in... let's see if I can find it again. Go on to entries. Yes. Okay, so you'll see that here, they didn't put an ampersand before calling entries. So that's a mistake I've made. I've taken a reference of the entries return. So I need to remove this ampersand here. So this particular bit of voodoo magic around the join, that's probably like, it's powerful as, but it's such magic when it comes to compile errors. I find it quite painful. Okay. Expected to find an option. Found a template 3D name. Oh yes, this is because, remember how I made specifying a template as optional? And because it's optional, everywhere I did specify it, now I'd say some. So there'll be a few of these. So what you're looking at here, this is going to be the result of all this effort. So what we're looking at here is a synchronization routine that knows to copy a biped across to Godot. All we have to do is find all the bipeds and make sure they have a position and a scene location. So here's a scene they're going to end up in. Here's their parent name, what it's going to be, and the child name. We specify it's going to be called parent player puck. Here's the template they're going to use, and then down here we try and get the existing position or modify it, and we set up its rotation and direction and translation like so. And this is wonderful because it should mean that whenever in the future when this is all working, if I add some totally new type of thing, I just have to define one of these systems and it will just show up in Godot. And I might have to add the kind of model to this list, and you know, I might have to add a few systems to call functions on it or something, but the amount of work will be a lot lower. I find this code a lot cleaner than the code I was showing you earlier, which was handling events and adding and removing and modifying and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so we got a problem with conversion from, and it's converting from this. If I looked at biped, it would show you that this is a so-called fixed 64. So a fixed 64 value is hold on, let me just split this and go back to the other file. A fixed 64 value is like 48 bits before the decimal point and 16 bits after. And you can change them to and from floats. So I'm going to switch to this other way of doing it, which should be biped.pacing.toFloat. That should work. Facing angle to radians. Look guys, I'm just going to take a 1 minute break. Please talk among yourselves. I'll just be right back. There we go. I'm back, folks. Surprisingly, I haven't lost all my viewers. Thank you for sticking around. Okay. Such a pleasure to be able to show this stuff to you. I see you guys burnt a hole in the chat window while I was away. Let's see. I need to give facing angle a type. Why? I think the quaternion, when it's created here, it wants to know what type that's going to be. And so I need to specify that when I say it's been turned into a float, that I know it's been turned into an F32, which is a type of floats that we're using for our positions. Okay, and then we've got the same problem down here that we had above. I really should be saying dot to float. Doop. And same thing's true for the Y location. You'll notice here that I'm copying the Y location over the Z location of the transform. That's just the way my world works. So I put all my stuff on the bottom. Y goes up in Godot. So my X and Y are actually on the floor, which are the X and Z coordinates in Godot. So that's what's going on with this, why this Y is here. And I actually wrote a whole blog entry about that called Making a 3D Game in 2D. No field Y lock on the biped. I probably called this Z lock, not Y lock. Okay, so it's not happy with this join, and what's the reason for that? Could it just be because I forgot to add it here as one of the things I want? Because you probably want specs preload that star, which should include a join. I don't think it knows how to join in this function yet. Okay, no field ship ID inside. No, yeah, I wrote ships rather than just ship. So ships is like a array that contains all the ships, and ship is a specific one. No field. Yeah. Did I recompile that? Okay, so spaceships don't know their own ID. I think I might have called it world ID. Yeah, I called it child world. So I'm naming each spaceship by the internal world numbering. So this world ID is a bit interesting. I've got specs has this idea of something called a world. So one world contains all the entities and all the components and things called resources. That's in a world. And for me, I'm going to have all these spaceships floating around the place, and each spaceship is quite complicated with like conveyors and bits and pieces moving on them and so on. So I thought it would be, I couldn't synchronize every spaceship that's in space to every client in a multiplayer game. There's going to be too much stuff going on. So I need to be able to have each client know just about a couple of spaceships. And I need to use a method called lockstep, which means the client needs to know everything about the spaceship. And so I thought it'd be easier to segregate that if I did it in my data all the way through. So I want to keep each spaceship independent from each other spaceship. So I do it by having one specs world per spaceship. And so I end up with world IDs. That's what's going on there. Okay. No variant or associated item space object found for the 3D template. Yeah, it's going to be the same thing. I probably need to write some here. Oh, that's right. Entity 3D template was the wrong type. So I needed to use entity 3D name or something like that. I created two things that were similar, I thought. Yeah, see, these are the different things that you could have, but that's not the one I wanted. I wanted template 3D name. Probably should rename this to be template 3D entity, because it's pretty confusing to remember both. Do I want to call it something else at this point while I'm thinking about it? The word other than template. I think the answer is no. Okay, so it's a template 3D name and a template 3D entity. So I want a template 3D name of space object. So this is how I specify what type of thing is getting created for ships. So I told you before about the bindings for my player. Well, here's the bindings for the ship. We already know the ship. We know the ship's pos is tracked by physics, so we don't have to bother synchronizing that in this code. We just need to make sure that we have the right definition of a scene that's used for ships. Oh, the end of the list is in sight. Painful compilation problems are almost done. How long has it been? 1 hour on stream to fix compilation errors. Too much explaining going on. Far too much excuses as well. Or does that just make it more messy? Breaking across multiple lines? I don't know. Anyway, I can't find join. Once again, I think the reason why is I need to use specs prelude, which contains join. It joins its own module. So once you've got the join module, you can use a join trait. Okay. Modules draw type. Yeah. What's the problem? Modules draw type is an unknown field. Yeah, I don't want modules draw type. I just want module draw type. So draw type is once again that enumerator. So if I've got something in my game, I use this component called a production module to define it. So a component is just a Rust structure that's been defined as a component in specs, and we specify how we store these things. And so every production module has other components that define its behavior, like what stuff it's containing, what stuff it's holding, if it's a box, or it's how to track it, that it's a conveyor and its data about that, or its recipes and what's going on. Those are all in other components. So if I build a component, Adawani, this is probably something you want to see if you're not paying attention. If you are interested in how an ECS works, build entity or build model, build entity. Yeah, let me just bring up my list here so I can remind myself where it is. It's in the action area, isn't it? Simulation. This game code doesn't know about Godot at all. That's kind of the point. So I've got a place module. So if you've been watching demos of my game, you'll know some of the different entities in there, and I can show you how I build them out of various components. So for instance, a storage box, we create an empty entity. We put in a component called module needs formation, which is basically just kind of a token to say, hey, you need to pay attention, this has just appeared, it probably needs to be added to conveyors and stuff. We add the concept of something that can hold things, that's a storage module. Yeah, well, that's actually just a name to say this is a box. It's almost irrelevant. This is the thing that holds stuff. It's the item grid, which we initialize up here as being holds 50 items. With the maximum stack size of 50 each. And then down here is a production module, so we say that this thing is at this location, facing that way, and you draw it using a storage model. A refinery, you create something called a refinery module, and it expects to find a recipe storage. So all the systems that manage it have a recipe storage. And refine module allows you to specify what recipe you want to something to change, and we put in a certain place. A scoop has a scoop module and a storage box that can hold whatever it's scooped up. And so if we look at scoop module, how that's used, I just made a system. I'll probably put it straight up in scoop module. Just trying to find right storage. I created a system, scoop system. It needs a scoop system data, and all it does is for every scoop in the game, it adds Godot. So it gets its grid and it adds Godot to it, and then the conveyors know how to take stuff out of a grid, so they do that, and that's why all the scoops in the game make gold. It's that simple. Later on, I'm going to remove that code. I'm going to put in this concept of polling the area around the ship somehow to find rocks in space and suck them up and put them on the conveyor. That's what the scoop is going to do. But right now, it just outputs gold all the time. It's kind of a source, as it's called, something that's making things for testing. So I'll give, I usually give people a demo of that at the end of stream. So it's saying that the module draw type is an unknown field. I think I might have made that a routine actually. Like module type, and then you do dot draw type or something like that. Let me just have a look at the production module, because I got a bit distracted there. Production module. Draw type. No, that's straight up what it's called. Module is one of these modules. Modules is a production module restorage. Module hasn't been changed. Oh God, I think it's still showing me an old error. No, it's showing me the same error somewhere else. I made the same mistake down here. God. Mismatch types. It expects me to put some here, because remember how we made the template optional? So we're almost past the first phase of bugs. Next phase is going to be borrowing issues. That should be fun. Okay. I see, so that's right. Our module facing is an enumerator. So here it is here, and I added something here called degrees that returns a U16, but I also want one called, let's call it radians, maybe call it here, and we'll have that return an F32, and it's just going to return self.degrees. It's returning an F32 from self.degrees dot to radians. So it takes the result from the function above, turns it into a float, tells it to change itself to radians. Problem solved. Okay, and then now that I've created a radians function, I might just call this 2 radians, because that will make it match up with the other name. Non-exhaustive patterns. So it's complaining that I've missed something here. We could have a sum that has a pointer to nothing. Interesting. Okay, so it turns out that this spatial new doesn't always return a spatial, if I'm interpreting that correctly. One of these functions can return an optional value. Optional, which is weird to say the least. Let's see if I got the... Do I still have the GD1 open? No. Yes, here it is. Hey, Weird Constructor, you like my font size? Cool. I like your new, shorter username. Is that because you got a different username for your phone? Anyway, good phone. Are you on the way to work? Or are you sitting at work, trying to work, but distracted by me? In either case, it's nice to have you along with us. Okay, so the GD native crate, and I wanted to look at that spatial documentation again. New. It does return a straight up spatial. So if we have a spatial, we create it. Oh, Christmas decoration time. Awesome. We did our Christmas decorations a month ago. Thank you for checking in and seeing the stream. Hopefully you can listen to us code up while you're doing your Christmas. It's always nice to know that you're watching. Well, Weird Constructor has managed to watch every one of my streams live, as far as I know. But I'd expect nothing less, since I'm doing it for him. I started it because he told me to. So, if you want to bug that guy about why do we have this stream, then please do. It says it's possible to have a sum option that has no body, a reference to none. So template 3D entity, it has a none option. Why did I put a none option there? Because that's like someone, if you don't have a template, okay, so that's when you go into the dictionary to try and look up a template and you don't have one. Well, what we're saying is that if you have none, if the person who made the entity said this entity never has templates, or the person who's setting up the list of mappings between templates and things says we don't have them, either of those cases, so one of them might be a loading fault or something. Anyway, we need to put that there. Okay. Cannot move out of GDPOS template. By the way, there's a fly buzzing around my head. If you guys can hear something buzzing on your microphone occasionally, there's literally a fly in here. So sorry to transmit my local insects directly to you. Hopefully you can smile now that I have explained the problem. Cannot move. Okay, so it's getting bothered that I'm not making a reference of this. So it's saying I should take a reference to it by going as ref, right? What is template here? So, and we shouldn't call it GDPOS anymore, we should call it GDSceneLock. So we're going to rename this from GDSceneLock to GDSceneLocks, right? Because there's many of them. This GDPOS is now a GDSceneLock. This comes back down to that discussion I had earlier about position being separated from the concept of where in the scene tree it is. What was the bug again? Yes, a template. So I wanted to have a look at what a scene location was. Back to the symbol. And put it on the other side just for now. So we look up the template, which is a name. So ultimately the problem is that we are saying here that we want to specifically, see we've got an enumerable that's actually really cheap, it's just the number really. So we don't mind if Rust decides to copy this, like so, automatically. We don't want it to specify that every time. So I should have put copy in the list of things that it has. And now that I've done that, this other bug's going to disappear because it's just going to copy it quietly. Cannot borrow the spatial as mutable. So I need to say up here that we're still expecting to modify this spatial. Oh no, sorry, not there. Here. And it can't take the child name out. I think from string expects a value type. So we're going to have to clone the child name here. I wonder where that fly's gone. Yeah, tracking a fly. That's all fun and games, isn't it? You know, they might say I wouldn't hurt a fly, but unfortunately I would if it was annoying me enough on stream. Yeah, there's some terrible videos about people, you know, not being kind to animals on stream. That's unfortunate. Okay, cannot borrow parent is mutable. It flew away somewhere, but it's probably coming back. So again, same thing. We need to say up here that we're going to change this parent by adding a child to it. Cannot borrow GD spatials is mutable. So the reason why we got GD spatials at all, so this GD spatials thing, we're trying to create spatials. We're only interested in those situations where we don't have a spatial. The reason why this exists is to create spatials, spatials being like nodes. So it's basically adding stuff to Godot that was missing before. But then down here we want to insert that element. And so the problem, we need to say this is mutable here, which we have. So we can't borrow it. So I wonder if I can say there's no spatial, and in addition to that filtering, also pass in a GD spatials dot entry, which is that thing that we put in that we can use to add one later if we want to. So entries. I wonder if there's some nicer way to do that. Anyway, I'll put here new spatial, and then in the other code, if I close others and then ship something, ship sync, we had no. Where's the one we were working with before? Ship sync. That's right, or insert with. There's probably some nice way of doing this too, but I was just thinking down here we could try doing it this way. So we're going to do new spatial dot or insert with, and we're passing in the GD spatial we're trying to insert here. So it might turn out that what we're doing is making this top part here a branch, where if there's a spatial, we create it, this template part, sorry. So here we're figuring out where it's going to be in the scene. Here we're creating a new one. But if one exists, we don't need to create a new one. So this probably could be evolved. I will think on that and I'll prove it later. But yeah, to do allow moving. Let's turn this off for a second. I messed around too much. I was going to try and get that fly, but it was going to be really loud, and I didn't want to deafen you, so I turned off the microphone first, but the fly left anyway. Oh well. Maybe next time. So we're going to new spatial or insert with GD spatial. That should fix the problem. I'm just trying to figure out why that compile issue exists. This one doesn't make sense to me at the moment, because this is how you make entries. So let me have a look at the other one, ship sync. Here we said GD positions dot entries. Here we've done the same thing. This dot entries. And we need to say it's mutable. It's because we created another variable called new spatial, which filtered it. So we'll just say GD spatial instead. It's because of you can declare another variable that has the same name, and I did, and so it messed it up. Expected a particular kind of closure. I probably don't need a with here. Or insert this. I bet that works too. Yeah. So we'll remove we'll remove the filter here. So it's going to work no matter whether we have one or not. And when we say or insert, okay. So we could say GD spatial or insert with. Yeah. Let's try that and see how that works out, because this is the path to code that knows how to move a spatial from one entity to another when we one world to another, or one parent to another later on. As we put this part, so it's GD spatial, which we could have got in the previous one, or insert with, and we specify the function that does the inserting. So I need to have another look at entry to just check how that works. But the one we want to insert here is, this is a function that's going to do it. So this generates a new spatial. Well, actually, yeah, it does need to be tabbed out. Tab. And another curly brace there. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And down here we set its name and add it as a child. So the plan here is we might need to remove it from its current parent if it already exists. So if this is a new spatial, so this part here is new spatial. So in this case we're going to return, I'm just thinking about how to do this differently. In this case we're going to return none, and then we're going to make spatial new as a default, so we're always going to have a spatial 100% guaranteed from this match, because you're going to go unwrap or else, which calls a function, and the function is let's get a new spatial. So we always have a spatial, it's guaranteed. And then with that, we can say parent's going to add this child. So now it's parented correctly. We change its name no matter what, whether it existed before or not. Yeah. So GD spatial is what we have to return from here. So GD spatial tracks two things. It tracks the world it's currently in and the spatial itself. So here we have to return from this little thing a new GD spatial instance. So the spatial we just made, new, so it's spatial is new spatial. And the current child world, which is wherever we just created it, which is this one up here, the world ID. Yeah. and if not that, it's the, so I might just put this in a variable. Yeah, no, I'll just calculate it again. So it's our current world ID, or default, no, unwrap or, and the default we're going to provide to unwrap or is going to be self.worldID. So we're going to track where we created that spatial, which is going to be in the location I just described. Now, in this outer one, we want to unpack that a second time. So we're unpacking the spatial and the current world ID. So we either unpacking it from having just literally now created it, or from having found it from previous frames. And then down here, we're going to set the name of the spatial, and we might add some code. Moves it from old world to new world, which will be necessary if it's, you know, as a player is allowed to walk between ships. So I'm imagining two ships could be docked together and there's two worlds side by side and you walk your player across. So we need to seamlessly change the player from being parented to one ship to the other, which means moving it in the scene tree at the moment it crosses that boundary. So that's what I'm talking about when I keep saying I need to track this. Cannot borrow GD spatials as immutable. Yeah, it's saying we can't get the entries out of it because it's also borrowed. This is an old error. It's like it's looking at the old code. Okay, it's a whole different thing now. Cannot find the value spatial in here, but we're using this new spatial concept here now. I might have to just go and get some fly spray. I know it's really annoying, but hold on a second, guys. So it's like been flying around my head for like the last hour. So hope you don't feel disappointed in my choice of solution. Excellent. Expected a tuple with 3 elements. So now it's complaining, I don't want to even pass entities in anymore. So it's complaining because I used to do it this other way with the filter thing. I don't need that. Okay, so we're on to the next thing. I can't modify this GD spatial here. What's the point of this entity transform? I'm pretty sure that I put this in before I decided to use positions as the transforms. Oh no, that's right. So we're going to read the position, read the spatial. Okay, so Godot, the specs has realized that Godot requires the spatial to be modifiable so you can move it. So we're not actually using a read storage of spatials, we're using a write storage. And the reason why is because we're changing the spatial. And then in here, which is, you know, pretty excellent actually, that it limits. This is the reason why Rust is so great, because we can enforce these limits of what's read only, what's write only, and so on, which you can't really do in other languages. So we've got the spatial, the position. So this spatials is now mutable. It can be changed, which means that this can be changed, and over here I need to get a mutable reference mute. And now I can actually change the spatial as we go along. Call to unsafe function is unsafe and requires either an unsafe function or a block. Now here's where we're working with GD native as a nuisance, because we have to put a lot of the stuff in an unsafe block in order for it to work. So one thing that refactoring is going to do is allow me to limit how many of these unsafe blocks I need. I should only really need one for each of the different systems that we create for binding to Godot, and hopefully there will be not very many of those systems. So, am I supposed to put it? I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to put it like that. And then it doesn't look right. I think we put it on the same line in Rust, don't we? Anyway, so all of this, we're going to say all of that stuff is unsafe, because set name is considered unsafe, or find node is considered unsafe. So pretty much everything useful in that function is unsafe. And here's another example. So we do a whole bunch of work to create a transform, but then we have to write it to the spatial, and writing it to the spatial is unsafe. So let me put that code inside the block. Oh, it's all yellow. That's very exciting. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually do anything yet, because I haven't replaced, well, I haven't called the systems I just made sure would compile for a start, and I haven't taken out the old bindings. So if I run the game now, so we'll just quickly make a commit for our new work in progress that now compiles, right? So let's make a git commit for all this stuff. This program I'm using is called Git extensions. It's a Windows GUI for Git. It's really useful. I like it very much because it's raw and it's fast. I can do everything in this I can do in Git on the console. So I still call this a work in progress. It's not really ready. I prefix all commits like this with a whip. And what it is, specs Godot integration compiles. Not used yet. So what we should see, interesting. I didn't realize I checked out a particular commit with no branch attached. Create branch. We'll call it feature specs Godot integration. Okay. So that's where we are with that. So now that that's saved, I can go back and continue working on it. So let's just start by running the game. The server needs to compile as well. Hopefully it still compiles and runs. We'll just do a quick test to make sure it's all working okay. So here's the game client. So if you're new to the stream, you're like, oh, he really is making a game. That's really good to see. So here's our little spaceships. There's a little guy over here. Let's look at the spaceships. There used to be a little guy over here. I must have removed the synchronization that put him in the right place. You can't see him anymore. So that's interesting. the two ships can be moved, but I haven't got a way of putting the input in to move them at the moment. And we can also build flaws like this. This client does not respond, not updating for some reason. There's a bug lately. It seems like the first client I create never updates. So you can see as I build the floor, it updates on both. That blank area is just an artifact of having very thin walls. There's no support for that yet. Conveyor. Making a conveyor. So, if I put a scoop down, we'll put it over here, and I'll place the conveyor very carefully. That's not facing the right way. We'll start with this one. So, see the gold is coming out that I mentioned earlier. And then I can put a refinery here. And the refinery is outputting refined gold like this. We can put it into a storage box. And we can look into the storage box and we can see what's there. So that stuff's all going and it's rendering. That's all lovely. The little player is missing. I think I removed the synchronization code during the editing. We'll just shut down the server, which is showing some ASCII art from the game. So we're going to stop worrying about compiling for a little bit. We're going to move into the next step. Thank you, NZ Heals. Move into the next. It's only going to get better once I get. I'm just building so much foundational stuff. I haven't improved how it looks for a long time. I'm really looking forward to getting into the next phase of adding stuff to the game. But I don't know. I think of it like an engineer. I'm thinking of it like I need to put in place all the code before I can like put in place all the awesome. Okay. Thank you for the compliment. I'll just take it. So here's the systems we've created. We've got a system that's going to synchronize bipeds, and it's going to do that by reading the biped storage. That's the little people. Right now it's only one person, and writing a position and information about how to put it in the scene. We've got one that should know how to create entities in Godot. We've got one that should know how to move them in Godot. We've got one that should know how to place little entities inside a ship. Yeah, well, part of my motivation was to actually build the game from the start. By the way, if you're interested in the game being built from the start, one thing I've done, let me just bring up my channel. I've got a hidden video on my channel that I haven't published because I'm just a bit embarrassed about some of the stuff I said in it, and I'm embarrassed about how much I edited it. And I hid it because I was so embarrassed. But let me just show you real quick, if I can. Where do I find all my videos? Here we are. So here is me. It's going to show you the URL. If you guys pay a lot of attention, you should be able to find it on YouTube. I'm not sure if you can hear that. Let me just pump up the volume of myself from the past so you can hear it better. So, plus 20. So, heavily edited video. Anyway, that's me talking from the past. I didn't have such a glorious beard back then, did I? Talking about Godot, talking about tile sets, and then this is what the editor used to look like back then. This is my 2D game. That's the conveyor that you can see in 3D now. That's what the gameplay used to look like. So if you want to see the game from the start, try and convince me to give you a link to that. Anyway, hopefully that was interesting. Let me just mute my audio again real quick, so you don't end up picking up desktop sounds by accident. So we need to take these systems that we have set up here. I'm hopefully in sometime in the future I can re-edit that to just show the gameplay and another embarrassing talking part. So that was recorded around November 2018. It was about a year ago. Was when that YouTube video was shot. So if you want screenshots, I've written a blog article about it as well. Once again, that 2D to 3D one, it goes through and shows some screenshots. Rendering a 2D game to 3D, has a little brief synopsis of the visual history of the game. So that's what it used to look like, and talking about how I rendered it and stuff. So that those are some actual screenshots from the game at certain points, and I date them and so on if you want to see in written form. Talk about inspirations and so on. Anyway, blah blah blah. Where were we? Okay, so these are the different systems, and so I want to make sure each one of these is called from the relevant places. So if I have a look in over here, I'm going to close everything else, close others. I'm going to go into source bridge. That's right. It says NZ Heals. I love it. I love it. You're right. It won't code itself. Let's see. So what I need to do is each tick. There's a fixed processing step. And then there's a frame processing step, and in here I get the events. So if I just completely remove all of that code, so that's no longer in place, in the Star World link, that's the thing that's making the ships you can see. So if I just, by commenting out this function, if I run the game now, and it builds, that's it building, I need to run a server for it to have anything, but it's not going to show anything, and the reason why is because even though it's maintaining the world, and it does stay in sync with the game, that was the code that was putting those two little ships here. So see, you can see here that it knows where the ships are, that's why they're on the console, but it's not creating the Godot objects. But what we should be able to do now is put a couple of lines of code in here that will by themselves show the world objects. So if you have a look at update ships, it's something very similar to this. So we're going to have update worlds of some kind. So let's just blat this out. Yeah. Up here. Well, I don't really see any reason not to really put it on process. All this code that's I just commented out, it's in Git. So I can just delete it like that. Bang. And if I want to get it back, I can always look at the diff. So sector, we want to get the sector and the world, and in the past we called move ships and move bipeds with the sector and the world, and we use world.confirmed, which is the version of the world. Later on we're going to use a predicted version, but for now we're going to use the world.confirmed. So this is cool. I'm going to change the name of this to lock world, which is a particular entity I use. Now, I miss my tea and water. I put them outside. Hold on a second. Yes, here they are. Great. So now that I'm equipped with certain drinks to use, we want the world, okay? And then with the world, we're going to run through we're going to rattle through the different systems we made. So we're going to think to ourselves, in the space world, do we have bipeds? And the answer to that question is yes, we do, because they owned by the space world. So we're going to create an instance of biped sync, and then with that instance, we're going to call run. In fact, we can just go world.run now, and to pass it, it's templated on biped sync. That sounds about right. I'm not sure if we template it like that or we pass it as an argument. I think we actually passed it as an argument like this. To the documentation. But actually, no. I'm going to look at my other examples of it. Oh no, we instantiate. First we make the system, and then once we've made the system, so see down here as my example, once we've made the system, then we call run now on that. Okay. Oh, that reminds me, I probably should update the Reddit post. I probably can't update the Reddit post. Maybe I'll just put it in here. Come join the stream. Compile issues fixed. I don't know. Probably everyone who's in my Discord who actually cares is already here. So nice to have you here, by the way. Thank you. I'm Tom here, making the Recall Singularity a space game. We build factories in space. Space. Bringing together all the fun, all the space games you can imagine. Sorry. And all the factory games you can imagine. And crushing them together into one gigantic space factory. And building a space station and warp gates and stuff with those. It's very exciting. Released in 5 years. Anyway, I'll probably have versions of it out before that. But my full aspirations will take a long time to realize, especially when I keep talking to you all the time. Stop distracting me. What are you doing? Okay. We've got the world. So we want to take GD and we want to pass it a mutable world. In fact, world.confirmed mute, which is what I should have called, not world.confirmed, that is already a reference. So we want to use biped sync. We're probably going to want to use a bunch of these things. We need to create entities. We need to move entities. We need to synchronize modules. And we need to synchronize ships. Now, one thing to bear in mind is entity create had all these arguments. We need to know where the parents are. We need to know where the templates are. Okay, so to populate these is also quite interesting. So entity creation. We need parents, templates, a default parent, and world ID. Now, a default parent is quite easy. To create a full dictionary of all parents is a bit more complicated. So we need some way of iterating through all the spatials that exist and making a hash map of those. Okay, I've got it. So originally I was thinking we could map them and collect them into a vector, but we don't want a vector, we want a hash map. So if we want a hash map, we'll make a routine, and in that routine we'll return the hash map once it's built. So we're going to say get ship nodes, and this is going to create or return all the ship nodes for the different worlds we have to worry about. And get ship nodes needs to take as an argument the sector that we're going to work with, and is going to look at the list of all the names of different places inside the sector and return all the spatials. So sector is a sector, it's a reference to a sector, it's constant, it needs to get a list of all the world names that we're currently worried about, and then for each world, so we're going to say for world ID in sector.world IDs, yeah, which doesn't exist yet. We want to create as a return value, we're returning this guy a hash map, parents, hash map that maps global world IDs to spatial names, to specific spatials. So that's what we're going to create a new version of. So we don't need to, well, we're going to specify it anyway. So let mute return equal one of those guys, new. So we're going to populate this in a minute. If I'm going to make a return value, I often just call it ret. So that's what we're returning. Okay, and then for each world, we're going to get the world ID. We've got a function that actually tries to find this by world ID. Yes. So if I have a look, I can find get ship spatial. Which works like that. And there's optional what it returns. So if let's world spatial equals this. So if we get a world spatial, we're going to add the dictionary. So ret.insert, its key is world ID, its value is world spatial. Okay, get world spatial requires an owner, which is the parent, and it also requires a world ID, which is often called the ship ID. That means that this function requires the owner, which we're going to call parent for the purposes of this function. So parent, that contains all the worlds, all the ships. That's done. So let parents equal this, get ship nodes owner dot sector. Now we can only build parents before we get the specific world. It's just the way that this stuff works, because this is going to need mutable access to the sector. Sorry, it needs immutable access so we can modify the sector, which we need to import. But once we call this next function to get a lock world, we're essentially got mutable access to the sector. And having done that, get world. Is there get world? Yes, get world mute. Having done that, we won't be able to read it again. So the fact that we have to modify the sector as we go along to add all the Godot tracking stuff to it is the ugly part of this whole binding straight into the world thing. What would be nice would be something like what Amethyst is planning to add, where you can roll the contents of one world down into another world, which sounds really cool, and that would allow us to roll our confirmed world down into this other one. It's a pity we can't do that here. There might be that's supported soon enough. Okay, so entity creation requires parents. So let's just create a creation object. Let creation equal entity creation. And one of the things it's going to require is this thing called parents. So the next thing it's going to require is something called templates. And so in order to have templates, we're going to have to add it as a member to this Star World Link class. So right now I've got something called subscenes, which is essentially what templates is supposed to be later. So let's just call it templates. And it's a hash map that maps, at the moment it maps space subscenes to packed scenes, but I don't want it to do that. I want it to map template 3D names to template 3D entities. Right? Right. Import. So if we scroll down a bit to where we load stuff, where are we? It's loaded and ready. I have these functions called try load scene. At the moment, they take a dictionary we're going to modify, what we're going to call the thing once we've loaded it, and a file we're going to try and open. So I'm going to change this so that it's actually a template 3D name. So template 3D name means we have to actually put the space object wrapper around it saying we're trying to load a space object, man. A player puck. So I'm going to import that too. Those are the two things that are allowed to be in space. Try load scene used to take a key type and output a dictionary that contained packed scenes. But I'm going to modify this now so it always uses this other enumerator I mentioned before, which is the one that has template 3D entities in it, like so, and then it says that it's got a scene. So it returns a template 3D entity. So it takes a dictionary that holds template 3D entities, and it always returns the same one. So down here, when it's inserting the ship scene, it always specifies it's a scene like this. And later on, I'll have another function that can try and load a mesh, and it uses the same sort of approach. So the default parent is going to be owner. I'm reading this other screen over here. I'm reading this. Default parent is owner. And the world ID, do we even know our own world ID? Oh, it's always going to be the space one for this particular class. So that's called space world ID, which is basically 0. So those are all the arguments that we need in order to instantiate and it needs us to take a reference to this rather than actually pass it by value. We also need a reference to parents rather than passing that by value. Now that we're taking a reference, you probably need to say parents is parents. You're going to use the other shortcut if you haven't changed this name. Okay, so that creates a creation object, and we're going to pass it in here. Now it's not the only place we try and load a scene. We also try and load a scene in this GD ship link, which is what populates the inside of a ship. So in the same way we had a dictionary of scenes, we're going to call it a dictionary of templates instead. I'll delete that. And down here we try and load scene. It's the same function you saw before, but now we're trying to load a template. And then there's all these keys here. So in this case, for every one of these keys, we're actually saying now module draw type, module type. So I said space object here. I want it to be called template 3D name module. So what I'm looking for is template 3D name module, like so, and then put it around this. So we're just going to go through and add modules to all of these things. So this is just updating the code to use this more generic approach. So now the dictionary doesn't just hold scenes, it can now hold different kinds of scenes, and the scenes can, the dictionary of all the things it holds can refer to multiple types of things. So it can return to modules or things you'd put in space or anything really. Return value is a global ID. So why is that unhappy? It's a hash map that takes 2 arguments. It's possible that I need to do a double colon there because I'm calling it, and I've put this, yeah, I've done that correctly now. So you need to separate types and template arguments with a double colon like that when you're calling a function. Template 3D entity. Use of undeclared type. Oh, I've put my errors on the other screen. I'm sorry, guys. Okay. Interesting how I'm putting the errors on the other side this time. I wonder why I'm doing that. Anyway. Maybe I should put it on the same side as I put it on last time. Ah. Sorry. All this futzing around. Someone needs a tiling window manager for streaming. That would probably make life easier. I need to find a good one and use it. Okay. Failed to resolve. Use of undeclared type or module. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to dock this now. View mode. Dock. Pinned. And then that's done. I can make that bigger. Great. Use of undeclared type or module template 3D entity. Okay. Well, it should be possible to just import that. I'm not sure. I must. Maybe it's not public or something. Yeah, I didn't make this enumerator public. I don't know why. Import it everywhere. Cannot find get ship nodes. So it's self.get ship nodes. Cannot find world. We want to use lock world here. Let's look at the next round of errors. Cannot find type template 3D entity. Import this. Cannot find the struct. GD entity creation was one of our systems and I mustn't have made it public. In fact, I probably forgot to make all of them public. And I need to make these members public if I want to be able to specify them elsewhere. Yeah, all of our systems are private. Okay. Cannot find structure, variant, or union type. Entity creation. Yeah, I should be able to import it. So probably in this mod, I didn't declare that any of these things are public, these sub-modules, so you can't get all the variables out of them. So I want to expose from each one of those a particular system and question. So pub use entity create pub. So this is exposing at the top level all these different things, so that importing them somewhere else will be easier. It also means that you can't get anything else out from inside those things because they're not public modules up here. So I can't get anything else from inside them unless I specifically do this exposure. So by doing this, I'm somewhat limiting what stuff is exposed. Also means if I move them later, it's a bit easier because there's kind of a redirection here, so I can point it somewhere else if I want to. Anyway, I've got quite fond of doing things like that. So here, where it's complaining that it can't find these classes, now we can find them. And by doing this on each one of these, telling CLion to try and import it, it actually is adding code at the top here that will do the import. Where is it? One of these. I can't see the import right now. Oh well, trust me, it's in there. It's probably on this long list of components things. Okay, so we're complaining there's no semicolon here. No? Okay. So GD biped sync, I expected it to be okay to just call run now on this because it has no members. Oh, that's right. If I want something that has no members, I need to just write a semicolon like this, and then I won't need to construct it specifically. Yeah, so the same thing's true of each of these. So this one requires a list of templates. Why do I need templates in this? I don't seem to use templates for this transform. So I'm going to get rid of that list. And now there's no data. The next one. Again, no data. So if I just put a semicolon, I don't need to construct it specifically. Use a path separator to refer to an item. And so, once again, the ship sync probably expects some arguments. So if we just make it an empty structure, then it won't need to be constructed so in such the same way. Almost there. So at the moment I'm just replacing, I wasn't using the systems I'd made before, and now I'm just replacing all my old management code with this, that I've deleted actually out of here, with this much more generic set of systems that we're going to call. And in a minute we're going to change it so we call similar systems inside the other ship. So this is all to the end of simplifying the amount of code required that understands my game state and can map it across into Godot. So fingers crossed it all makes it much simpler. Cannot find get ship spatial. That was inside it as a member function. So put it in the member. Hold on just a second. Okay, great. So we fixed the top bug. Let's just test that. It's not happy with self. So get ship nodes is not marked as something that both of these are static. So actually I don't want self here. I want the name of the class, which is star world link. What do you guys think of these pictures, the size of this area that contains my face, and the size of the two screens on both sides here, which show a kind of idea of what's going on in my two other screens? Do you think I should squash all this stuff down and make it smaller and move it across a bit and make the chat window smaller so I've got a bit more space for code? Do you have any other thoughts on how I should lay things out? I mean, I was wondering if I should make them vertical, go up the side of the screen. Yeah, let me know what you think would be most appealing. Is it nice to be able to see what I'm up to on the other screens when I'm over here and I'm playing with Windows, and you can see, you get some idea why I'm looking that way or looking over here? Any comments on that would be appreciated in the chat, just to give me some feedback on whether that's working for you, and whether you want me to change it somehow. I'd love it if that was a green screen, but it's not green, and therefore it doesn't work. And then I could like put the code with my face over the code in a way. It would look kind of cool, but it'd probably be annoying. I don't know. Any and all feedback is welcome. And if you're watching a recording and I said that, then feel free to just throw it across on Twitter, Discord. There are other options. Google for the recall Singularity, and you will find tons of interesting things you can read and talk to me about. Okay, templates. So remember, we changed that dictionary to called templates. We want to create an empty one by default. No field template on this type. Yeah, so I changed all this to say template, but we actually want it to say templates, like so. There's a bunch of errors around that. Oh, I left a couple of S's with my voodoo magic alt key. No field subscenes. So once again, I use templates here. So I need to change it to templates. No, okay, so there's a whole bunch of code which is inside the ship link that I plan to delete now. And the reason why I plan to delete it now is because I'm going to I'm replacing it with this new generic stuff. That's interesting. I'd forgotten that I'd deliberately put code in here that slowed the conveyors down. I don't want to do that anymore. So for a long time, I probably thought that, yeah. I don't even remember putting a time slow in this. So that deliberately slows down an important update which shows the little things moving along the conveyors. I'd forgotten that I'd deliberately slowed that down. It would have been because at the time I was debugging it and I wanted it to go at a slow rate. We haven't changed the way that the little rocks that are shown on conveyors are drawn with this Godot sync stuff. So I probably need to leave that particular function in. Update conveyors. So we get the sector in the world. Yeah, we're going to have to get back to this one. And make this one far more, like, use the spec stuff that we were just talking about before. Because right now it's a bit custom. I don't think I can get away from that. But there's other stuff to do with placing tiles, removing tiles, adding floor. Adding floor is another custom one. All this stuff always adds up to so many cans of worms, man. I could just tell you for sure. So if we want to add a scene, then we want to use self.templates.get, and in .get we want to This particular one is doing things that have been duplicated across, so I don't really want to update that. I don't really want to update apply transform. Build module and edit floor are basically interfaces to GDScript. Set up events. Strictly speaking, we don't need events. Well, we don't need this events queue here, so we might as well remove that because we're not going to use it. Well, we use it. We will use it for floor building. Let's not worry about that right this second. Oops, I'm moving the black sheet behind me. Okay. I probably shouldn't ruin the studio magic by talking about it. Let's see. Module info at. This is part of showing diagnostic info to GDScript. Set world ID, that's for communication from our parent. So we still need those things. We are going to, so I'll remove all the time slow stuff for the update conveyors, and I'll leave the update conveyors here. We're not going to have any world events anymore, so including the floor adding. The floor stuff is one thing that, hold on, just thinking about what I want to do with this. Okay, this is interesting. So I'd forgotten that actually in order to manage any floor changes, we just tell another script. So I have one more script here that I've forgotten I even had. So we've got one for the Star World link to create spaceships, one for each spaceship, and one specifically to modify little tiles that go inside each spaceship. It's created as a child of the spaceship. So I'd actually forgotten that one existed. So all we have to do to keep the floor happy is make sure that whenever it changes, we notice and we call this floor one. How are we going to know that the floor has changed? That's a good question. Thank you for asking. I'm not sure yet. One of my favorite ways of doing that is to actually have an integer that changes every time the floor something changes, and you increment it in one place, and then if you want to see if you match, you increment yours as well to match. So in this case, it would mean we had, a count of how many times the floor had changed in GD ship link, and we had another one that we incremented every time we actually changed the floor in the background data, and if the two mismatch, we update the client, and we copy it across. Before we had an event queue to do something. I'm going to just downgrade by not allowing you, not showing the floor at all. So if I just straight up delete most of this code. So we're going to leave that because this is like a template of what we have to rebuild. And one option is we could actually register for this events thing. Yeah, let's do that. So earlier you saw me delete all the events. You saw me a moment ago delete the system that set up these events so that I'd get sent. What I'm going to do, which is in the setup events function, if I went into there, in here, there's the stuff that I commented out. So I'm going to put that back in. So we keep having a queue coming from the background processing of all the things that are changing. We're going to ignore most of those things. We're going to ignore it when a module is added. We're going to ignore it when a module is updated. We're going to ignore it when a module is removed. All those things. So module add or module update or world event module remove. We're going to ignore all those things for now. Why is it complaining? Okay, and only the floor. So that should mean the floor should still work. That's nice. if you want to say some horizontal space in your editor, you can say use world event star Yeah, that's what I've done in the past. And I might do it again here. I've done it, yeah. So what has been suggested here is there is an enumerator called world event, and if you actually use it, you don't need to specify world event : any of these places, which makes the code look tidier. For a while, my editor didn't actually support that and would show it as a false error that didn't exist. So here it is complaining that the patterns aren't possible. Which is probably to do with what I just did. So you see how the editor is getting confused. Because the editor is confused, it's showing false errors. And so I usually avoid that feature because it doesn't work in my editor. That's one of those unfortunate rare cases where using an in-development programming environment doesn't quite perfectly work all the time. It's worth the pain in overall. Expected a unit const. Yeah, so the problem we've got here is that we're unpacking, and this might actually be the problem with the errors we just saw as well. But I needed to say that I don't want to unpack anything here. Get ship nodes. It doesn't need a method. This is a star world link. Get ship nodes like so. No world IDs. So, okay, this is it complaining that I haven't made a function where you can get world IDs. Remember I mentioned I didn't have one yet. So here's my list of worlds. I want a list of all the keys in this. I don't think I have one yet. Yeah, so let's see, get world mute, pub function, and I want it to be called world IDs, and it returns something. So if we jump across to our documentation for Rust, that's a screenshot of my game from the past if you missed that part. In Rust, we're looking at the hash map, because I want a list of all the keys in the hash map, and I want to return that and call it something else. So let's have a look and see what type keys has. It returns an object called keys with the same type as the dictionary keys. Great. So that's exactly what we're going to return. K and V in this case are going to be the same type as the world's hash map, this one here. So it's going to return global world ID to world sync keys. Don't know why it needs to know about world sync in order to return the keys to it. It's probably some technicality to do with ordering or keys being integrated or something awesome. So if you know the keys, you get those, I guess, by going self. Oh, I need to have a reference to self. Self.keys. No, I need to specify which one I want, which dictionary I want. The one called worlds. Self.worlds.keys. Thanks for the suggestion, by the way, Togglebit. That was quite helpful, and I appreciate you wanting to help. It's a pity it doesn't work in CLion, which is the name of this editor I'm using. Star world link. Get ship spatial. Mismatch types. What's mismatched exactly? Okay, so it's complaining that we're passing a pointer and world IDs is passing us references, but get ship spatial expects us to pass it in by value, so I need to dereference this. So to launch my game, I've made a batch file. So I'm and I've got a little shortcut on my desktop. So here's my shortcut. And if I have a look at the shortcut properties, I'm answering a question Togglebit asked. If I look at the location, it's in the root of my repository here. It's just a batch file. It could be a shell script for you if you're running on Linux. So if I edit the batch file, it looks like this. So it launches cargo and it uses the right target for my version of Godot. So I'm using nightly 64-bit on Windows compiled with MSVC. And then I choose the core to be compiled. And if it doesn't compile, we pause and we exit basically. If it does compile, we drop to no error. We change into the directory where Godot's been compiled, because I downloaded the Godot source and compiled it myself. We change into that directory and we call it with the path argument, and we specify the path to where the project is. This is the folder that contains your project file. This is the folder you load in Godot, and it will immediately start the game. And I found this by looking in the Process Explorer at the game process running, and I could see this argument. And I can also use a similar thing in Visual Studio to launch Godot straight into my game in debug mode. So that makes it very easy. If I want to step through both the Godot and the Rust code in the debugger, I can do that. So that's how I launch my game. And the server file looks very similar, except the bottom doesn't launch it through Godot, it just launches the run. Godot.windows.alt.tools.64.exe is the Godot binary when built on my computer for Windows. Yes, that's what the Godot build script will create for the release version in 64-bit. So I'm using a optimized debug build of Godot, so it has all the symbols and stuff. Having the source of Godot is nice because that way I can step through, with my stack traces and everything. So that's how I launch my game. And so initially I used to just compile the DLL here, and then I used to launch it in Godot separately, and it was getting a bit of a headache. I was like, oh, I'll just automate this. It's getting annoying. Return value. I'm going to insert the world ID. It probably needs me to put a reference in. So it wants me to specify that this is a value like that. I need to put a semicolon here because this for loop isn't supposed to return anything. Great. So we should get a bunch of empty ships. We might even have flaws for them. But with these things, if it works at all, it'll be absolutely amazing. I think I just put my game shortcut's still down here, so I'll put it down further where you guys can't see it because it's behind the picture of my screen. But I can still see it. Okay, I'm getting a lot of errors. So something caused a panic. Let's scroll up and see what happened. So thread unnamed panicked because it tried to fetch a resource, but the resource does not exist. Okay, so the problem here is that we've made a bunch of components that we're using inside of specs, but for every you're welcome, Togglebit, and thank you for asking a question. Specs needs you to register every component. So if I looked at my list of all the components we're using again, in here, one of these components, not actually there, but one of those components has not been, we haven't told specs that we need it to be available, and as a result it's blowing up in our face. So in the mod, I actually tell Godot about the ones I can think of. Down here, in register GD floor components, register GD star components. And just looking at this list, we can quickly see that there's a whole bunch missing. So let's roll through the systems and have a look what ones we're using. And make sure that every one of them is mentioned here in that other list that I just hidden. So biped sync requires bipeds. That's standard, so it's already registered. I know that off by heart. That's also already registered. Scene loc is already mentioned down here. So that system is fine. Entity create. Yeah. Let's have a look at entity create. So it has a list of entities. It needs to write to spatials and read from scene locks. Spatial and scene lock are the two that are here. That's also fine. Do I still need entities? I don't think I even use the entities one anymore, so I'm just going to remove that just because there's no point having it. Entity move. Reads from spatials, writes. Yeah. Production module, pause, GD scene lock, yeah. Spaceship, scene lock. Yeah. All of those sound fine. Oh, it was trying to fetch a resource. I wonder which resource it was. Yeah. I don't know yet what's going on with this resource here. Let's have a look at all the fetches, because I don't think I've added any. Dot fetch. There's not many of those. Are we trying to read from any of these? This is another example where we don't need an entity anymore. Mod. I think I know what's wrong. I think I added this function, but I never actually called it from anywhere. So even though I'm sitting here all complacent that I have called it, I probably forgot to call it. So I wonder in what case it got forgotten. Because these things here, interesting. How do I turn on Shred's nightly feature? That at least should give us the clue. So I'll see if I can figure out how to turn on the feature nightly for Shred. So let's go into Cargo Toml and find Shred in here. It's not even mentioned in here. Where is Shred used? Because Shred is used inside of specs. Let's have a look at the documentation for this. Specs, Rust, enable, Shred. Because I'm wondering if I need to add Shred to the list and turn on the nightly feature there. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, but I can't figure out where to turn that on. That's what I'm trying to... So I need to figure out where the specs nightly feature option is. CryZ92. Do I specify it here as one of the specs features? Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. So CryZ92 has very kindly solved the problem for me in the chat. So I'll just put it there like this, and hopefully this will now... I've missed something here. I think I need to say version, yes. Again, based on the chat. So there's a bunch of stuff to recompile now. And so this should mean when it can't find the resource, it'll tell me which one, which will make the search far easier. Yay, streaming! pays off again. Woo! Is there anything that streaming can't do? I don't know. Okay. Thank you very much for Crazy. Are you under a different name than you are in the Discord? If you're not in the Discord, it'd be wonderful if you join us. Because, you know, I mean, check it out. We talk all day about Godot Rust and share our projects and stuff. So please, yes, jump on, talk to us. Unless you really hate Discord, which I'll understand. But I'll be sad. But do. Let me just make another one that doesn't have an expiry. Yep, no limit. Generate new link. And then that way we can support you in your own game development. Either of those links is fine, whichever one you prefer. Ah, he's here! Yay! Hi! Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, and anyone else watching, please join Discord. If you can't find a link, just Google for the Recall Singularity Discord. I'm sure you'll find it pretty quickly. I'll put links everywhere just to draw you in. Okay. We'll talk more when I'm not streaming. We'll talk. You'll figure it out. Okay. There's a lot of warnings here. I probably should pay more attention to those. Let's try running the game again. So I'll click on the game batch file. And it's panicking, of course. The same as before, but this time I should have some more information of what's going on. It tried to find the production module, but it does not exist. Okay. So the reason why this is a problem is because I have two different kinds of worlds. Remember I told you I had one that contains spaceships and one that contains the middle of spaceships? The one that contains spaceships doesn't know about a production module. So if I look at the production floor, I register production module in this world. This is the world that's used inside a spaceship. These are all the components you can have in a spaceship. So look carefully. And there'll be more of them later. But if you're looking in space, this is the list of components. That's different. And the reason why we have a problem is because biped only exists here. And production module only exists here. So when looking at the Star World link, I wrote a list of all the different systems that we're running process. I don't want to run module sync because module sync is specifically for the ship, not the production module. Only for ships. Sorry, only for inside ships. Right? Right. Now, actually looking at this a second time, I've just realized we want to update our requests for what we want to make, which is what this one does, what that one does, and what that one does. Then we want to create them and move them. Otherwise, you're going to get delays of several frames before things show up. So I need to put them in the correct order as well, like that. As you can see. Also occurs to me that I probably should, while I'm here, I probably should copy this code and put it across inside of the ship as well. It's not particularly painful to do so. So inside the ship, in process, after updating the floor here, well, maybe we should actually update it before the floor. So we'll put it up here. So there's a bunch of stuff here. We've got parents. I actually don't even care about parents for this thing. I'm happy with a hash map that contains nothing. So that's what we're going to do for parents. Hash map new. Do I care? I've got a whole sector. I can just call the client and the Starlink and ask for the map. So maybe we should just get the whole map of all the parents anyway. So even if in a ship, if something in a ship wants to be relative to the star world, it can be. That will work. And obviously it'll be nice to have some caching here of some kind. It's probably, yeah, it's private. Let's make that public. So Okay. What world do we want to lock? Well, we want to lock our own world. Our own world is this one here called world ID. Like so. We get the world. Now we need a creation entity. We import that. We don't need to synchronize bipeds at the moment because there's never any bipeds parented in the ship. We don't have the entity in the world. We have the same exception as the other one. We do want modules though. We don't want ships. There's no ships inside ships at the moment. Like if you flew one ship inside another, they both belong to the space world at the moment. It might be later on we change that so that when two ships are docked, they somehow interact, because you don't want them to jitter all the time as one ship is flying and the other one's essentially trapped inside it. You want it to look really lovely, and like you figure out which of the two ships is bigger, and then the smaller ship belongs to the bigger one or something, which would cause weird edge cases if you have them both the same size and you add to one and then you add to the other such that this one's the biggest and the next moment that's the biggest. Oh well. Run now. That run now needs to be imported too. It's part of specs. And then GD entity transform moves the entities. We need to import that. So with these are all the specs systems that we've been making earlier. Oh, I didn't write a comment there. Now that we're inside the ship, it's not compiling. So when we're creating entities, the default is actually going to be our own world ID here. And that reminds me, I think the Star World link also has a world ID for space. Yeah, it does. So everywhere I've been using this space world ID, I shouldn't be using that constant, in case we end up with two space world IDs on the client. Which, you know, at the moment seems a bit crazy, but yeah. I'm just reading this code just to think about what I want to do with. Yeah, I don't want to start replacing space world ID willy-nilly everywhere. It was just going to be what I did in the update function, but it got out of control. I'll just leave it alone. That seems to have compiled straight away. Okay, let's run the game. And if the game looks like it used to look, then that would be a massive success. Oh, it's empty, but I'm not too worried about that right now because I've got to run the server first. So I'll run the server. Because at the moment the server didn't compile. At the moment the client doesn't know what to do if the server doesn't start, and it doesn't have an internal idea of what things should look like. It's getting that from the server. Run. Obviously, and one of the things we're going to have to do, some things we're going to have to do before I can actually share this game with you. I need to have a computer to stand a server up on, which isn't a big deal. I can just host one. I need to save what's on the server so that stuff you make doesn't get lost. I need to make sure that a client that joins a server that's been running a long time will work correctly and reliably. I need to have a little bit of stuff you can do in the world. At least you should be able to move a character that you can see and chat, right? Those two things, you got a chat room online, that's still fun. And then hopefully you can build like a big mega ship or something and have fun just placing conveyors everywhere and blowing up the server. And when the server does blow up, so every so often it needs to refresh back to a standard state so that, you know, you don't fall off. It could be that every hour it creates a screenshot of everything that's in the world, puts it in a public place, and reboots the server, assuming that something happened in the meantime. And that would be really cool. Like, you could just... And some way of transmitting a patch, right? So even before it's a fully playable game, just a place you can go, and then later on, a place you can go and eat rocks, and then later on, a place you can go and eat rocks and move ships, and then later on, a place you can kind of have races. Oh, Welcome to my office. I might just re-professionalize my background. Hold on. Yeah, we're all super ultra pro here. Okay. Enough of that. I'm getting distracted. So, okay, so the server's not being compiled using the nightly version. The server's being compiled using the stable version of Rust. Yeah. I mean, like, why not? Let me just go back to that option that we turned on earlier. Now that we've narrowed down the problem, turn it back off for now. Let's just comment this out, and then it's probably a very nice way of doing this, and Crazy will tell me, but for now we'll just delete it and have a commented one. Okay, I'm going to start the game. The server's going to start here in the editor. So, come on, this would be so cool if it works. So unlikely, but so cool. So unlikely. Ta-da! Do you like my space? Well, if you have missed it and you just joined us recently, trust me, there are supposed to be spaceships in there. It's not making them right now. But I wonder what it is making. That would be interesting. There are all means of ways of debugging this stuff. I'm just trying to figure out. We could start with the most graphical way. So I'm going to quit the game here. And I'm going to run my shortcut to Godot and open it up. It's loading. It takes a little while to load before I can bring it across. Okay. So here's Godot, which is like Unity but free and much more awesome because it's free. And I don't just mean for, cost freedom. I mean, it's actually like freedom. I have complete control of this thing up here. If for some reason I decide I really want to write my own renderer, I can do that. I can do whatever crazy stuff I like writing it in Rust and having it integrate. I could even compile the two together into one big binary if I wanted to. So it gives me way more power than I get if I was using Unity, and it means I don't have to expose my financials like I do with Unreal. So Godot is a really great choice. You could have the feature for your own crate and then pass it for the client, but not the server. Yeah. I need to learn more about how features work. I appreciate the comment. I need to learn how features work, because as far as and imports in general, what happens when two different crates import different versions of things seems to be you get both libraries. And what happens if you have different features? I don't know. So there's some education there for me. Now, I said it was a space game, so why is there a garden in the background? You're probably asking. There's something called an HDR light map. So when you see reflections, you actually see this, and it's going to be a more spacey one later, but I just grabbed a standard one. If you want to see the space background, you have to turn that on. Here it is, and it's made of multiple layers like so. So this is how you get a nice background in space. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the game, and I've set it up so that background becomes visible the moment you start. That was really interesting and multi-layered, like multiple things kind of appeared at 0, 0. Really quickly there. So the thing I want to know, if I go to remote, I want to start looking. This is the 3D window. That's cool. Features are additive. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so now I understand what your other comment meant. What Crazy is saying is that if I specify the feature for specs only in my game crate that is compiled using nightly, but not in my basic one, then my nightly build will have the feature, and my server build that doesn't include SG Core will not have the feature, which means it will compile for both, and I'll still get that defense if I'm running the game version. That's excellent to know. Thank you for the quick education there. So read the chat window and see if you understand what he means. And if you don't, well, you can always ask him questions. I mean, he's right here. Or jump on our Discord. We got this expert right there. I'm loving Discord, by the way. It's really great to like be building a group of people who know what they're doing and building games and stuff. It's really awesome. It's really awesome. Okay. Ships is where we should be finding a bunch of ships. If I had to guess, I would say that what's going on is that it can't put ships there because I've called it ships with a capital S. And in all my code, I've been writing a lowercase s. So it could be that all my hard-coded parents, this is where I wish I'd written more debug output maybe. But that's a big clue as to what's probably going on. It's probably a problem like that. So I'll just put this window back over here. I can't recompile my code. I can't recompile my code without quitting Godot because right now it's locking the DLL. Even if I quit the game, it's still locking it. Oh, what am I going to do? Which I think might be to do with the networking thread because it didn't used to lock it in the past. Let's see. Module sync. My problem was the name of that node. So I thought, well, I was thinking that the ship node, the ship sync is the problem. And that I did say ships here. And it is called ships here. And it's directly underneath root. Did I make ships a script node? That's probably the problem. So if I look in local and I look in ships and I look at what is a script, and the script is the star world link. So I think it's trying to find another node inside ships, also called ships, and that's what the problem is. To put the ships in. So the solution is actually to quit the game. So I'll just quit this game. And to modify this scene tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename this. We're going to call it Star World. We're going to add another spatial underneath it. Add child node. And it's going to be a spatial. And we're going to call this one Ships with a capital S. Right? So now if I run it, we got a scripting error. But it's cool that something has changed. Attempt to call function get children in base null instance on a null instance. Okay, so the problem is that we've got places in our code that are referring to this old name of ships. So I'm going to pull up VS Code. I'll set up VS Code with a plugin called Godot, and that allows me to, or I think it's called GDScript. Let's just check this real quick. Godot Tools. Godot Tools gives me a whole bunch of power for editing GD scripts here in this editor. Let me just put this on this side. So I was going to just quickly search for ships. So here's a place called all ships. This is the same file that had the exception before. So we're going to change this from ships to, I think it was Star World. Is that what I called it? Yes. Okay. Great. Here's another one. I think this other one is actually in a, I duplicated my entire game project and called it Arcade, and then made a version which had a little asteroid, and you can fly around and shoot at the asteroid, and then they vanish. I put some pictures on Twitter. It's very basic. In fact, I wonder if I should just build a release and put it out there just for the hell of it, even though it's really nothing to it and there's no scoring yet. To have said I've shipped something, and you guys can have a look at something I made. It has no Rust in it. Anyway, if you want that, mention it in Discord and I'll consider it. Anyway, or even in the chat window. I don't know where you go to the chat window if you've full screened, but you push a button and then you push chat or something. I haven't done enough watching Twitch. It's just makes me look dumb as a streamer. Okay, enough ranting. This might fix that problem we just encountered, so let's try running it again. Okay, it panicked again, so something was poisoned. Oh, what's happening is that on one frame, there's a panic in Rust. It's like something was wrong, and it's an exception from Rust. Something really bad happened, and the way the library handles that is that it captures that in the next frame. You still get a call, which I think is really cool. But I'm using a mutex to lock my global state, and this mutex I'm using to lock global state is gets poisoned when there's a panic, which is also really cool. And what that means is every other frame it does this global sector state was poisoned panic here. And so I need to scroll up to find the original panic. So we've got the problem with that feature. There's some component again. You know what that panic tells me? Is it tells me that we created a ship. Right? So inside StarWorld, we created a ship. We created 2 ships. That is awesome. That's a big step forward. And so the problem now is that we haven't set up, there's something not set up in the child world that we use for each spaceship. Parking lot has mutexes that don't poison if you ever don't want the poison behavior. Yeah, that's a really good point. Unfortunately, I do want poison because I'm locking an entire sector at the moment, and it's full of things that during a panic can end up in an inconsistent state. So I really do want a poison mechanic. I need to replace a bunch of hash maps and stuff if I wanted to avoid it. I appreciate the mention though, thank you. I'm appreciating all the advice. This is really cool. It's like a real-time guru. I could just say out loud some problem. Anyway, we're going to put that feature back on. But this time, based on the guru, Cryzif92, we can go to cargo, and I don't understand why SG Core is only used in the game, but yet when I ran in the server, it had a problem with this feature. Like I was trying to... Oh, no, that was a different file. Okay. And look at this, I've just forgotten. You told me something new, and I said, like, it's new, but I'd just forgotten it, so I forget things all the time. It's a pain in the ass. But thank you for telling me anyway. I forget things all the time, but I make up for it by getting good at working with things I don't understand and just figuring it out as I go along. So SG Server is still trying to compile with that feature because I put it in SG Core, but SG Core isn't used by SG Server. Is it because it's in the workspace? Did I mess this up by mentioning these things? Specs, thread, Surday. I think the fact that these projects are all in the same workspace is somehow messing this up. The other option is just to change I might just change my default. It's probably easier at this point to do that. So let's change my default target. So this is my default target. Here's I wanted rust up list, which lists. Oh, I need to say rust up target list. List all the targets possible. How do I list the ones that are installed? I can't remember. Rust up help. Oh, that's right, rust up show. Okay. So these are all the tool chains I have right now. And once again, I'm just going to show you the default one is the stable i686 option, which is the 32-bit version. So we want, and the reason why I'm using this particular version, I switched to stable because the debugger in CLion was not working with the nightly version, that's right. Or the code intelligence wasn't working at the time. And it could be that if I try and update to the latest version, it still won't work. So what we're going to do, I wonder if I specify the feature as false. inside of SG server, it'll somehow, this is what default features false does. Specs. Nightly is a tool chain, right? And a target. If I change it in Rust up, yeah, that's not going to work apparently. If I change in Rust up so that I'm using Nightly for both the server and also the client, because I'm using the Nightly toolchain, I'll be able to compile with the Nightly feature in both, right? The problem is that my default toolchain I'm using for SG server is the wrong one. Oh, that's the other option I can do. As I can change this link to use the same Nightly build I showed you earlier. So I can go into here. I use this target for and use this for my server as well as my client. Rust up override add Nightly. I like that idea too. Is that save a file in the folder that goes yeah, I'm going to edit in the target. Edit configurations. SG server. So the command we run is going to be that hopefully it gets passed in appropriately. Yeah, so now it's recompiling everything. So this is a good start. So because I've changed the target, we're using a different version of the compiler now. Before we were using a version that was stable and reliable and had old features. Now we're using the new experimental one. We're doing that before for our client, but now we're doing it for the server as well. And as a result, it's recompiling all the stuff that we had before because all the binaries were compiled with the wrong compiler. I'm sure that made 100% perfect sense. We are waiting for the compiler. I have a fast computer, but it's tough to wait. And an SSD. Just don't wait too long for Rust to recompile everything. So when it's compiled, we're going to have to run the client again, so I'll just queue that up. And while we're waiting for the computer to tell us what we did wrong, let's see if we can figure it out ourselves. Ship link, I bet we put one of these in. Or it never ran the component adding stuff. Okay, so we've got this, and it's panicking. Let's scroll at the panic window. Once again, computers beat humans. It tried to fetch one that doesn't resist. It's called physics pos. Okay, so the whole idea of having a position. Yeah, you can also put a Rust toolchain file in your folder. Yeah, I keep changing. I think the Rust toolchain doesn't, you can't put different ones in for different targets within the same workspace. I don't know. I got it working and I forgot about it. Right, you know, problem solve, move on. You'll find a lot of that in my work. So it's probably not ideal, but it's good enough for me right now. Oh, look, there's another fly. I don't know why it's in here because there's no way in right now. It must have been in here the whole time. Yay. Hopefully it doesn't get too distracting. So the problem is that there's a position that we're using, a 3D position for all our stuff. Now, we had it in the space world, but not in the... we didn't have it in the spaceship world until now. So we need to add that. I'm sorry, I banged the microphone there. We need to add that here. So I'm just trying to figure out if I want to put it into production floor so it's used by the simulation too. I probably do eventually. Let's just add it to both. So if I go into space, I'll stop the server now. If we go into space, we register the position. We do it inside physics. The setup function for the space state. And when we're setting it up, we actually put the position in somewhere in here. I think we just let this other physics system do it for us. Anyway, suffice to say that we need to put this pos component in. So either I set up all of physics, or I just put in the one pos component. I'm going to go for the second option of putting it just in the one component for now. So now that we've done that, we go to the production floor and we look at the list of components being registered. And we're going to add one for pos, which is it's a rotation and position in 3D space. Thanks Crazy92 for mentioning the Rust toolchain file we could put in the folder. The server is now running, so I need to connect with the client. Hopefully it doesn't crash straight away again. Panic, I mean. It is panicking, okay. Let's find out what I missed this time. So the GD scene location. Okay, so part of the logic that I was adding was this concept that whenever we create a world, we call back into a function that's been set up, and I get the feeling that this function is not getting called when I create worlds. And probably the reason why is that setup is probably not done for these specific worlds because they're created in advance on the client. So what I might need to do is add some code that calls the function for any world that exists at the moment we set it up. So go to star world link and go to ready. I'm just going to quit these again. Quit. Stop server. Hide that. So the problem we have is that I tell my sector that whenever you see a new world, I want you to call this function on it. But before I even call that function, there probably are some worlds. So here we just set it. However, we should probably apply it to every single world that exists at that very moment. So what we do with the new world callback is that basically we take a reference to this option, we map it, we apply it to the world as so. So up here for world, this is us going, we're going to iterate through all the worlds that exist at the moment that we set up this callback, and we're going to call the callback at that moment with those worlds, because we're missing the two worlds probably created when this function is made. That's my guess as to what this bug is. So for world in self dot worlds dot values. So for each of those worlds, it needs to be mutable and probably needs only to say values mute. Yep, I like these standard names so we can guess these things. World dot, and we're going to call the callback with the world. So we pass a reference to it, there's a mutable reference to it, which we have already. Exactly like this. Done. And my guess is that if I run that, that problem will go away. It's complaining that I missed something here. Okay, I need to get the confirmed version. Confirmed. Because this is not actually really a world, it's an object that contains a world inside it. Okay. Lock. Get lock world mute. So we've got a world sync, which manages synchronizing lockstep worlds. We've got a lock world, which is what a lockstep world is. Why is a callback in a box? Whenever you have a function, each function has a different type. And I don't want to template this function for the sector based on the type of the callback. Otherwise, I'd have to put the template in the type because I'm storing it. So I need to put it in a box because it's a dynamic object. You've got a dynamic. This function has a different type every time. So it's unsized. So you have to put it in a box because it's just a template. This is not really a type. This is a template of a type. So hopefully that made sense. No, that's not true, Crazy92. You'd think that was true. That sounds like how C would do it, but it's not how Rust does it. So if you declare a lambda and you assign it to a value, yeah, the type. Okay. Well, I'm not a function pointer expert in Rust, but as far as I understand, the type is different every time. You have two functions return the same value. Even two lambdas return the same value. The type is different. The type contains the location where you're calling from, basically, and the entire closure and all that information. Mismatched types. I need to put confirm to mute here. Okay, and now it's saying that I don't need. Oh yes, because the pointer. Lambdas are fn, mute, fn once. Function is a normal function pointer like in C. Well, that would be lovely if that was true. I don't know. I can't tell you if you're right or wrong because I don't know enough about it. I just know that I tried to do it without a box and the compiler blew up in my face. It could be that during the process of trying to fix all the compile errors, I removed the need for a box. This is not blowing up. So there's some invisible ships out there we can't see. It's possible they're in the wrong place, or there's something else going on. So we're going to quit the game, and we're going to load Godot again, and we're going to load the game inside Godot and look at the scene tree again, and see what scene tree got created. Okay. Well, that's a good pointer because I don't like the way that you have to put it in a box myself. I would like it if it was a basic function pointer, especially since I'm using it like a basic function pointer. I'm not using lambdas anyway. For that one, crazy. Hold on. That's right. Run. I want the remote tree. Let's have a look. So we've got a star world with ships in it. Ship 1. It has a floor which has conveyor items, yes. And then there's floor tiles, which is used for paving the floor. I'm probably supposed to create a node in here that I put my ship tiles in. And that node is probably missing, which is probably why it's not working. And it's possible that I used to create that with code. And now I'm not. Let's have a quick look at this. So, first problem, we need to find out what name is required. That was in module sync. It was looking for a child name called modules. Everything else has capital letters, so let's make it a capital M. Let's have a look for modules. In quotes. Okay, so this is the only place that modules is mentioned. So then we go to the ship link. I deleted the code from here that used to exist, but I probably will find that ship link that used to create a modules parent. That's the new version. Add module. Scene instance. It's possible I put it directly inside. Just trying to find out what I used to do. it's kind of not relevant because we used to call this add module function. And add module, I've deleted this. Used to get the one we're going to put inside it and instance it. And then add it. I think we used to put everything directly inside the ship. We never used to put the child nodes inside a sub node inside the ship. So it's because I've added a sub node that this is not working. So if we just go back to Godot. Oh, by the way, crazy! I do appreciate all the comments about the function pointer, even if you know, I couldn't say I agreed. I do appreciate you talking about it still. It's all cool to argue with me on stream. I appreciate you letting it slide when I can't give you a clear answer or like try your ideas out, because that would, you know, be a distraction. But I still like the fact that you're talking about it. Anyway, root contains ships. So what is a ship? If we go into 3D ship, I think I put the scene in here. Yes, a ship root. This is the scene we create when we create a ship. It has some lights in it that I mean to delete. These actually aren't necessary anymore because they're created by the floor. So having those lights actually just creates a bright area in the middle of the ship, which is not what we really want. Or we might leave the spot in just as a subtle origin point type thing. All the other lights you see are created by the floor as you grow the ship yourself. I'm going to create a new node and I'm going to call it modules, this name here that's in the code. So we're going to, is the game still running? Yeah, quit the game. Add child node and we're going to call it module, oh no, spatial. I always type the name of the node I want in there rather than, like, not the type but the name, which is like a common problem I have. So this is going to be the parent of all the modules. Because it didn't exist before, I wasn't willing to put them in. Great, let's try. We're fast forwarding time to catch up with the server, but we're still not drawing anything. Let's have a look at the tree again. So modules is empty. Oh, one thing to bear in mind is I capitalized this letter to capital M, but in the meantime I didn't recompile my game DLL. So if I double click the link here, it's going to recompile the game DLL. Hopefully when I quit Godot it saved everything. I think it did. I don't think that worked. So I'm going to quit and restart the server. So this restarting the server because the client can't catch up quickly is a pretty minor network bug. It probably won't take me very long to fix it. I just never bothered because it wasn't necessary. But I definitely need to fix it before I can put it up and let you guys play. So something to worry about. Okay, so back in here, once again going to load the ship scene, ship root. Modules, okay, so that did save, that's great. Run the game. Thank you. I'm not sure how to pronounce the 3 in your name, ST3Co. You're most welcome. There's quite a good history of streams, lots of it's just code. I hope you find some good stuff in there. Okay, so I should be seeing spaceships, but I can't. So once again, let's look at the remote. So this is yeah. The Godot editor is copying the scene tree, which is populating this, and I can look at it, see what I expect. Modules is still empty. Okay. What am I missing? Probably the easiest way to look into this problem is to I was going to say the easiest way is to put in debug output, but it just occurred to me what's probably going on. Whenever I add ships in the past, so if we go back to the difference, whenever I add ships from space, I call a function in to tell them who they are. Once they've been added, they need to be have their world ID set. And because I'm not setting their world ID, those ships don't know, they're sitting there waiting. If I have a look in ship link, remember ship link is a thing that I can see is being created but isn't putting any stuff inside itself. There's a function in here I need to call, where is it, called set world ID, right? And it sets this world ID variable, and until world ID changes from being the default of 1, interesting, so if it was the default of 1, it would work. Are those worlds 1? One of them is actually world 1, so that should just mean that we end up with 2 ships that are identical, so that doesn't fully explain this, but I'm pretty sure I'm not calling that function. Yeah. I'm a little bit confused about that now. Okay, so the other thing we could do is start adding more debug output. Another thing we could do is grab a debugger. I feel like jumping straight to that last option, although I haven't run a debugger on my code for some time, so it's possible it's not going to work. Which I guess is all part of the fun, isn't it? Right? So we'll quit the game, and we'll launch Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition, which is free. And I'm going to launch a solution from here, which is Godot, that one there. I'm going to launch a solution from here that's generated based on instructions that are provided by the Godot team. So if you decide this is something you want to try and do, have a Google of build Godot from source, right? And you look in compiling for Windows. So I'll just paste the link to that in the chat, but I just searched for compiling Godot from source, and it will tell you what to do and set up, right? Visual Studio Community, I'm using 2017. You need to install a variety of things, set up scons, but the part I wanted to tell you about was development in Visual Studio or other IDEs. So if you look at this, when you run scons, you can provide vsproj equals yes. If you do that, then one of the outputs it will create is actually a whole solution that lets you compile Godot from Visual Studio. So that solution is created for you dynamically, which is it's really quite clever. And because you've got a solution, you can then go into here and go into properties for the project, and then go into debugging, and in here we can specify what we want to launch. Now I've changed where my project is since I wrote this. It's now in a folder called game underneath that. So let's just check that path real quick. So game dev star factory, this is my repository. My Rust code is in here, and here's the game folder, and it contains a project file, project.godot. So I take this path here and I put it up here, and this tells me, I think that chooses where on the screen I want the game to appear. And I go okay, and then I run project's out of date. Do you want to build it? Yes. I probably could have chosen no. scons is going to launch and rebuild things. Hopefully it won't take a long time, because if it ends up rebuilding Godot, it takes a very long time. Nope, just going straight to linking. And when Godot launches, we can actually place breakpoints in our Rust code. And because of that, I should be able to start looking at state and figuring out a degree of what's going on. Unfortunately, the debugging of the Rust code isn't perfect, isn't ideal. But it's really nice to know it's there. The other option from, other than doing this, is going to be writing a lot more debug output and trying to understand that. And the third option is to start running a bunch of unit tests around the functionality I've added for the integration. And both of those are a bit slower and certainly a lot less interesting than this approach. So I've got a function here in my Rust in conveyor formation that I was debugging last time. So you see how we've got a breakpoint inside Rust code here. And so if you look, you can see the call stack. So the call stack here starts off in Godot. So we've got, and because we've compiled from source, we've got all the source code. Goes from Godot and all the variables, all the variable names, through the scene tree, we're iterating through into notify group, and that goes all the way into my Star World link, some sort of wrapper that's been provided for me, through a panic bridge. This is all stuff to do with the library, and then we end up inside. This is all binding stuff still. Do tick. So somewhere down here I've missed something that's also mine. So this is a physics process. This is where it's updating the world. And we go all the way down into my Rust code. And, you know, this is Visual Studio's debugger. It's actually, you know, there's some things that look weird because it's Rust, not C++, but it's usable. It just occurred to me that the font size is absolutely tiny to you guys. I just might pump that up a bit. Hold on. File. Settings. Where are we? Tools, options, fonts and colors, source size. We'll pump it up to say 15. Hopefully that's readable. The windows are still really small, which is going to make your life harder there. So I'm working on a 4K monitor here, so to me it looks really crisp and clear, but on the video it's not so ideal. Hope you won't mind too much. Okay. So the thing we are interested in is inside of, here you can't see my source. SG core, Star World link. So it's not the Star World link I'm interested in. I'm interested in another file. I'm interested in the ship link. And inside the ship link, I'm particularly interested in the process function where we're going to call all these systems. So we want to see the module sync is doing something, and we want to then see that the creation and entity transform is working. It's possible that module sync is just putting the modules in a really weird place. I was also wondering why we're not getting these events. When do we set up the events? Could it be that setup events is not working? Odd. Yeah. Anyway, that's great. So putting a breakpoint here is going to very quickly end up narrowing these things down. I don't have to guess. So we'll run some more. So there's a bunch of debugging around conveyor output. It's doing some loading. Okay, so now we've got a ship. So okay, so setting up events worked okay. Get the sector, get the parents, get the world, create a creation object with self templates. So module sync run now. So let's jump across to module sync. So how do I open this? So we'll just use Control O again, and we'll jump up one level, go into components, go into module sync, and we'll put a breakpoint inside this, and then we'll run some more. So we've stepped in. So now our call stack goes through specs over here, very squinty tiny writing. Okay. Taking a while to step down into here. So we get a scene. So we're setting up, these entities seem like they're setting up okay. What draw type do we have, for instance? Module draw type. It says here the draw type is storage. I just want to comment on the fact that actually it's decoding these enumerators. It understands Rust enumerators. Last time I looked at this, it didn't know how to print out Rust enumerators. So this debugging has improved since the last time I looked at it, which is excellent. This debugging window is actually showing me quite sensible information, I think. Yeah, it doesn't understand some of these more complicated structures though. Anyway, so it looks like we created the two components that we need here. So that part should be fine. And so we go through and we add components to every module. So if you look at what does pos look like after this? Pos has a pos entry ID. Yeah, so pos is a very complicated object. We can't see the value in it because it's giving us a reference. Did I look at the wrong thing? Oh yes, I can see the rotation and the translation here. And a vector with data, lots of data. Interesting. I see, so we've got parent 1, parent 2, these are just floats. So you've got 3, 0, and 0. So yeah, these are being populated okay. So we'll go back out to the ship link. So we want to see what happens next when we run creation. So creation should call GD entity creation, and that's the part that actually calls Godot. Yeah. That's the path that's the most interesting. So we're going to remove this breakpoint and go into GD. So I'll open that myself to put a breakpoint in it, so we can just jump through all the code that launches in components, entity create. Have a look at run. Put a breakpoint there. Yep. So now we're about to create entities in Godot using a spec system called GD entity creation. We're debugging straight into Godot. I compiled the source. And grandparent. That should get us the node that's we're going to use. So I look at this grandparent node in the debugger. I don't know what that's telling me. We'll see where the code path goes next, and that will give us a clue as to what's going on. Okay, so we're going to have either the default parent, so that should always go forward. Okay, so we can't find the parent. So what parent are we trying to find? Oh, I think I know what the problem is now that I've seen this. And so this debugger has confirmed for us that the problem is we can't find the parent. I think if I was to look in Godot again and look at the project, I'm not so hot on running it in both at once. I'm just going to quit the debugger and we'll run it inside this. I think we're going to find that the script isn't directly inside the ship. It's in some child of the ship. That's my guess. Let's have a look. 3D ship. Ship root. There's the ship root. It has what code in it? It has an actual script. There we go. That's my problem. And then it was the floor. The floor is what holds the ship link. So this thing called modules needs to be inside this floor here as a child of floor in order for the modules to appear. Okay, so let's just try that. I'm just trying to make this not max full screen. Let's run that now. Yes, isn't that awesome? So we've got a little spaceship up the top here. It's running laggy at the moment because we're fast forwarding time to try and catch up with the server. So each frame it's doing 200 ticks. So that's like 10 seconds. Yes, it's 10 seconds of processing per frame. So it's a little bit laggy. Okay, there we go. So this is pretty much everything we could hope for. So we're probably, if we looked at this, we probably got two versions of the same ship in the same place. So why do we have the same ship? Because we're not setting the world ID in the same place. I'm not so certain as to why that is. Probably because the ship doesn't know its own ID. It's getting the wrong data. I can't answer that one. Because I'd expect to see two copies of the same ship in different places, right? Why hasn't it got a flaw? Well, we tore that code to pieces, so it's possible we broke it. But if I build the flaw to make it bigger, we should see the walls move. Okay. So I told you before that the first client doesn't synchronize with the server properly, so let's try running it again. Oh, that doesn't make much sense. I might just quit the server, run the server, run the client, try again. But changing modules later on, like adding modules to walls and deleting them, it's pretty complicated. I'm pretty happy with how far we've got so far. So I'm just going to commit everything. This is just me committing things to Git. So we've got the sync system is now sending into Godot some bugs, right? And so this way we've got a nice clean slate for later. I'm going to push this branch to my own repository. Push. Yes. Yes. And so in the process of pushing that, I'm basically backing it up. So I'm feeling really great about that progress. I think I've made some good steps forward. I'm looking at the clock that you guys can't see. It's currently midnight plus 43 minutes, so it's currently 12:43 a.m. in the morning, late at night. I probably should just call it now because I have to get up tomorrow. I'm having so much fun. I feel full of energy and ready to go, but trust me, I need to call it. So if you want to see more spaceships in space, colliding factories, Godot and Rust type stuff, please sign up to the Godot to the Recall Singularity Discord server, or follow me on Twitter. So let me just quickly give you the Twitter link. Profile. So this is me, and I share regular updates as to what's going on, as well as telling you when we're on stream, so you can drop by or you could follow me. Here's the Twitter, and there's a Discord one in here as well. So if you could drop into Discord, you'd be most welcome. I'd love to see you there. Discord. Let me just give you a special invite just for you and all your friends. Edit. I don't care if it expires. Generate a link. Copy. Give you a Discord link. There you go. That's the Discord link. Great. It's in the chat. So have a look at that. Jump over. Join up. Talk about your games. Ask me about mine. Give me ideas. Talk about the stream. I'd love to hear all that stuff. Last thing before I go, I'll just quickly show you a quick picture of, and then I shall send you on your way. A quick picture. GIF cap. I wanted to show you the last time I was crashing. So, this is where we're going to go back to once we've got the code we've been working on up and running, is ships colliding in space and movement and stuff. Soon we're going to get back to the console where you can walk up to the console, and when you do so, you can push E and you can start flying the little ships. So you'll be able to move from moving a player to flying ships. Anyway, that's enough for now. There's some blog entries on Medium to read. There's some videos in the past. There's past videos. I'd love you to check out all our stuff. And thanks so much for watching. It was a pleasure to stream for you tonight. And I'll probably see you again tomorrow, starting at 9 PM New Zealand time, which is when I started this stream, which was 3 hours and 45 minutes ago. So thank you very much for joining me. Bye, everybody.